Reborn in 2001, my girlfriend's mother becomes my secretary. Until Lin Feng was reborn back to the summer of when he was 18. He never realized that his wife's mother, who had long passed away, was actually a beautiful colleague he worked with at the supermarket during the summer break. He had even helped her catch some falling goods, which caught his girlfriend's attention. Since fate has given me a second chance at life, I will protect you both with all my might. Liu Wei, don't think just because you saved my mom, I'll like you. Lin Feng, I know you don't like me, you just love me. Chapter 1, Rebirth in 2001, making up for regrets. The fierce wind swirled the dark clouds in the gloomy sky, and trash could be seen scattered all over the streets. The air was thick with the earthy smell before the rain, mixed with the stench of garbage, drifting everywhere. Pain. A heart-wrenching pain. Lin Feng felt as though his body wasn't his own. His head felt as if someone had been poking it with needles, a sharp, unbearable pain. He had been an ordinary middle-aged man, finally managing to send his child to his father's house while he and his wife went off for a wild time in a hotel. Why the hotel, you ask? It was because his wife, Liu Wei, had an adventurous side. She wanted the thrill of the romance they had when they first started dating, and Lin Feng, wanting to change things up as well, went along with it. Hence, the hotel sheets were subjected to their escapades. He clearly remembered having a car accident on the way home, pushing his wife out of the car in the last second before it exploded. He was engulfed by the flames. But now, the blinding light in front of him made it hard to distinguish if he was in reality or in a dream. Xiao Feng. Xiao Feng. Are you okay? Don't scare Auntie. A gentle voice echoed beside him, filled with the woman's anxiety. If he is not okay, call an ambulance. This young man hasn't woken up yet. He must have injured his brain. Yes, with the heavy goods falling on him, there's a big chance he'll end up in a vegetative state. He's already cut up, I think he must have injured his brain. The Liu family is in trouble again. Yes. If it wasn't for saving that woman, this young man wouldn't be in this situation. Various voices flooded Lin Feng's head, intensifying the headache that was already unbearable. Ah! The young man suddenly yelled and sat up, propping himself up from the arms of a plump woman. Lin Feng blinked, and before him stood an incredibly beautiful woman. Her exquisite face was full of worry, her hair slightly tousled around her face, giving off a broken, messy feeling. She looked like a goddess who had descended from the heavens. In all of Lin Feng's decades of life, aside from his wife Liu Wei, he couldn't think of anyone who could compare to this woman. Her charming aura, her graceful features, made her look so out of place in the dirty, chaotic environment. She seemed like a fairy descended from the heavens, evoking a sense of awe in his heart. Seeing Lin Feng waking up, the woman hurriedly helped him sit up. Xiao Feng, are you okay? Does your head still hurt? Let Auntie check. As soon as she spoke, the gentle woman once again examined the spot on the young man's head where the goods had struck. A worried expression appeared on her mature face as she seemed deeply concerned. Struggling to endure the pain in his head, Lin Feng began to process what was going on. At the same time, the men around, seeing the woman's concern for Lin Feng, couldn't help but feel envious and angry, all wondering why it wasn't them in Lin Feng's place. After all, the woman's noble and cold aura, her gentle face, were things these ordinary men rarely saw. Naturally, they all had their own thoughts about her. And Yinrong anxiously looked at the back of the young man's head, using her flawless, white hand to gently move aside his dark short hair to check the spot where the goods had struck. In truth, Yinrong hadn't wanted to come to work today, but she was being harassed by debt collectors at home, so she had no choice but to come to work to avoid those vicious people. Her late husband's debt had caused her a lot of trouble, and she often found herself distracted at work. She had been worrying about her late husband's creditors coming to bother her again, perhaps even finding her daughter. She hadn't noticed the heavy goods falling from the truck behind her, which was carrying boxes of apples. To give you an idea, the box was so heavy that it usually took 4 strong men to lift it. It wasn't a life-threatening situation, though if someone had reached out to pull her aside, nothing would have happened. However, the men who normally fawned over her had all backed away, some even ready to watch the show. They all wanted to see what would happen to this self-righteous woman. When Yinrong had given up and closed her eyes in despair, a young man, who was usually quite reserved and had just started working for the summer, rushed up to her. Anton, get out of the way. This boy was about the same age as her daughter, and though he was introverted and rarely spoke, she had never really paid attention to him. But at that moment, Yinrong's mind was filled with one thought: he was her hero. What woman doesn't dream of love? What young woman doesn't have her feelings? Auntie, auntie. Is there a flower on my head? A teasing voice came from in front of an Yinrong. The voice was low and with a hint of awkwardness that made an Yinrong realize something was strange. What was this boy doing? Why was he so embarrassed? An Yinrong hurriedly pushed the boy away from her chest and looked at him warily. Her previously gentle gaze was now filled with suspicion. But all she could see was the boy's innocent face, his handsome features still youthful, his clear eyes filled with concern. Auntie, am I beyond saving? Seeing this, an Yinrong felt a pang of guilt in her heart. This was the boy who had saved her life, and yet she had been thinking such things about him. Cough, cough, it's fine, just a little scrape. The woman coughed to cover up her embarrassment, her jade-like hands fumbling as she tried to figure out where to place them. At that moment, Lin Feng finally realized that he had been reborn. Looking around at the rundown streets and the old-fashioned bicycles, hearing the familiar sound of a supermarket's promotional sale, everything felt so familiar yet so strange. Had he returned to the summer after the college entrance exams? He remembered that in his previous life, after the exams, his mother had found him a summer job at the supermarket, calling it a way to build character, but in reality, it was to help him earn money for his university tuition. Good job, young man, that was so close, an elderly woman with grey hair said, leaning on her cane and holding a bag of noodles. A chubby man also approached. Rongji, you should treat Xiao Feng to a meal. The chubby man was the owner of the small supermarket. The reason he had asked an Yinrong to work here was because he was infatuated with her beauty. The man's gaze shamelessly roamed over an Yinrong, occasionally lingering on her black stockings and shapely legs. After all, such attire was rare at the turn of the century. Moreover, this elegant woman had just lost her husband and was in a vulnerable state, needing someone to rely on. It was like a perfect scenario for him. Fat Wang. Come home for dinner. Why are you everywhere? A woman who looked like a landlord's wife stormed over, grabbing Fat Wang by the ear and pulling him toward their home. The woman, who was as fat as a pig, was the boss's wife and the true authority in the supermarket. It wasn't too surprising that Fat Wang had an interest in an Yinrong, but his wife was just too unappealing to him. As the boss's wife passed by an Yinrong, she shot her a provocative look, as if saying, "Slut, stay away from my husband." An Yinrong seemed used to such looks and didn't mind. She was still feeling guilty about her earlier thoughts. Thankfully, the boy didn't interpret my gaze the way I thought. Dear, take it easy, I was saving someone. Xiao Feng, say something. Quickly explain to auntie. Laughter erupted around them as people dispersed. It's human nature to watch the drama unfold. But by now, it was evening, a time when people were heading home to cook, so the once crowded street had grown quieter. The air was misty, almost as if rain was coming. Lin Feng looked up at the beautiful woman before him, and a smile tugged at his lips. He had intentionally done that, partly for fun, but mostly driven by the instincts of his youthful body. Only when he reached the checkout counter did he feel the full weight of his situation. He had indeed been reborn back to the fateful summer of his 18th year, the one filled with regrets. Xiao Feng, In truth, an Yinrong wanted to explain her earlier distasteful look. Auntie, are you okay? That was really dangerous just now. It's fine. And Yinrong smiled, inwardly sighing, "Yes, just a child. Why am I overthinking this?" Looking at the young man in front of her, who was about the same age as her daughter, she couldn't help but recall the moment he had stepped forward to save her. A fluttering sensation stirred in her heart. But what she didn't know was that this flicker of emotion would one day snap, unraveling everything. Although the supermarket Lin Feng worked at was small, it had all the essentials. As a convenience store, of course, it had iodine. The woman hurried into the store and took a bottle of iodine. Xiao Feng, here's some iodine. Let me help you clean it up. Lin Feng could hardly believe what was happening. He felt as if he were dreaming. His head was once again being carefully tended to by the woman. And Yinrong, with her delicate hands, was gently applying iodine with a cotton swab. This woman really was kind to others. Cao Chengsheng really wasn't lying to me. It was nearly 8 p.m. now. Fat Wang and his wife had long since gone home, leaving only Lin Feng and an Yinrong in the store. There were other employees, but only 2 people were needed to watch the store at night. Outside, it seemed that the rain had started to fall lightly, and the atmosphere inside, with the lone man and woman, became intimate. The atmosphere suddenly turned a little more suggestive. Lin Feng seemed to notice an Yinrong's heavy breathing and, after thinking for a moment, decided to sit up. Hey, what are you doing, kid? Be careful, you almost spilled the iodine. Lin Feng rubbed his head, feeling a little embarrassed. Auntie, there's no one else around. We're a bit too close, aren't we? Ha! And Yinrong almost laughed. She realized how much she had overthought. How could a pure-hearted boy like this have any inappropriate thoughts? All right, my daughter is the same age as you. What are you afraid of? Are you worried that auntie will ruin your reputation? And Yinrong said, pretending to be coy. Seeing this, Lin Feng realized that the woman had misunderstood. To make a woman like you, the first thing you need to do is make her interested. No, I'm just afraid. Seeing Lin Feng's adorable expression, and Yinrong couldn't help but laugh. Fine, I'm not afraid of the gossip. Hurry up, or the wound will get infected. As she looked at the boy lying on her side, and Yinrong casually started a conversation. Did you know? Auntie's daughter is the same age as you. Her name is Liu Wei. She just finished her college entrance exams and is going to N City University of Technology. You might even be classmates. What did you say? Oh. Lin Feng, who had just leaned his head toward an Yinrong, suddenly stood up in a panic, looking at the woman in front of him in shock. Chapter 2, The Murder on a Rainy Night. When an Yinrong mentioned that her daughter's name was Liu Wei, Lin Feng was stunned. What was happening here? He wanted to slap himself. He had just been so rude to his wife's mother. This whole situation felt like a drama, and Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. Just moments ago, he had been talking about becoming like Cao Cao, but now, he didn't even have the energy for that. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't a shameless person. He had principles. Seeing the flustered Lin Feng, and Yinrong also felt confused. What's wrong? Xiao Feng, did I say something wrong? Actually, she wasn't very familiar with Lin Feng. He was just a boy working at the supermarket. They exchanged casual greetings, but they didn't chat much during work. And Yinrong didn't know what was going on with this young man. Lin Feng quickly calmed down. It's nothing, auntie. I just wanted to borrow your phone to call home. I'm on the night shift today, so I need to tell my mom that I want to be home for dinner. As soon as she heard this, and Yinrong couldn't help but laugh, you kid, it's just borrowing a phone, no need to be so nervous. Saying this, she took out her phone from her black handbag, a bit worried that Lin Feng might not know how to use it. She thoughtfully turned it on and opened the dialer. Lin Feng took the phone and couldn't help but marvel at it. This was a Motorola, and it was clearly a sign of wealth. After all, it was 2001. Most people couldn't afford a phone and still relied on public phone booths. Even Lin Feng's family only had a landline. But based on what his wife had told him, this was probably one of their most difficult times. Her father had died in prison after committing suicide, and with no source of income, and Yinrong had to start working. And because of her husband's cowardice, they were now in debt by hundreds of thousands. This was the spark that would eventually lead to an Yinrong's death. But what she didn't know was that all of this had happened because of her stunning beauty. Following the phone number in his memory, Lin Feng dialed it. It was the home number they had used for over 10 years. Hello. Who is this? A familiar voice answered on the other end of the line. Lin Feng nearly broke into tears. His mother had passed away years before his car accident in his previous life. Mom, it's Xiao Feng. Oh, Xiao Feng, are you on the night shift tonight? Why haven't you come back yet? Yes, I'm on the night shift. I won't finish until 10 p.m. You and Dad can eat without me. Ah, you should have told us earlier. Your dad and I have been waiting for you. You just finished the college entrance exams and your dad insisted on celebrating. All right, be careful when you come home. It's not safe lately. Bye. Listening to the beeping sound after the call ended, Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh bitterly. His mom was still as straightforward as ever. 2001. Everything was still here, and those regrets hadn't happened yet. His father was a teacher at a local high school. He had been in the army in his early years and had the romanticism of a scholar and the composure of a warrior. In Lin Feng's memories, his mother had always been outspoken. Though she was a bit frugal, she was genuinely kind to her children, just not very good at expressing her emotions. All right, it's just a little later than usual. Why are you acting like it's a life or death situation? And Yinrong instinctively patted Lin Feng's head. Her eyes softened with affection. It was a look only her daughter would receive. But now. Aunt Yang, now that you've patted my headache suddenly went away. Lin Feng said playfully, his earlier sadness replaced by a mischievous grin. He was full of youthful energy. The woman shot him a mock glare and put the iodine bottle away. All right, now that you're fine, go do the accounts. I'll clean the floor. And from now on, just call me Rong Yi, Aunt Rong. Okay, Rong Yi. Lin Feng replied. As An Yinrong turned away, her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why she had said the last part. He was just an ordinary young man, after all. Well, maybe he was just a bit too handsome. Especially the way he had stepped up to help her earlier. There was a sense of peace in that moment, a feeling she had never experienced since her husband's death. When she thought of her late husband, the crushing weight of their debts flooded her mind. Outside, the rain began to fall steadily and the air grew cooler, blurring the glass of the small supermarket. Looking out through the foggy window, it felt like a gentle, melancholic scene. Inside the small supermarket, the mechanical sounds of the computer were mixed with the sound of the mop gliding across the floor, creating an oddly soothing atmosphere in Lin Feng's heart. The young woman bent over, cleaning the dirt on the floor, while the boy sat nearby, his slender fingers tapping on the greasy computer keyboard. Occasionally, he would lift his foot, letting the mop slide underneath, bringing a faint, mature fragrance that only a woman could exude. Looking through the misted window, the boy appeared handsome and intelligent, occasionally furrowing his brow as if deep in thought. The woman, graceful and gentle, absent-mindedly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, adding a touch of charm to the scene. It was like a harmonious couple, and anyone who looked would be filled with envy. Dingling. The phone's ringtone broke the peaceful moment. It was An Yinrong's Motorola. Without looking at the screen, she picked it up right away. The only person who would call at this time was her daughter. Hello, dear, what's up? Mommy is still working. Lin Feng perked up, straining to listen. The only person An Yinrong would call dear was her daughter, his future pure-hearted girlfriend and the woman he would one day love. When she answered the call, An Yinrong's exhaustion disappeared, replaced by a warm, happy glow on her face. What? You have a fever? How high? 38 degrees. Don't worry, Mommy will come home right away. After hanging up the phone, An Yinrong's face turned anxious. Xiao Feng, I'm afraid I'll have to leave. Wei Wei has a fever, and I need to get home. Lin Feng handed her the ibuprofen and the umbrella. Rong Yi, I've already noted the medicine down. You go ahead, I'll stay and watch the store tonight. An Yinrong looked at the calm Lin Feng and the ibuprofen in his hands, and warmth spread through her heart. All right, thank you. I'll take you out to eat sometime soon. She quickly put the medicine in a black handbag, grabbed the umbrella, and hurried out. Watching the woman's figure disappear into the rain, Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh, everyone's here, and this feeling feels so good. As he sighed, Lin Feng noticed the red calendar hanging on the wall, marked with a red circle on July 11, 2001. Because the college entrance exams hadn't been reformed at the turn of the century, Lin Feng had just finished his exams. Looking at the red circle, the rainy night, the fever, the celebration, and him alone watching the store. Suddenly, Lin Feng remembered something that would haunt him forever. He opened the glass door of the supermarket, and outside, the rain was pouring down heavily. The old street's drainage system wasn't good, and water had started to accumulate in some places. He looked towards a small alley in the distance, knowing that in 2 hours, something would happen there that would shock N city and even H province. The life of a stunning woman would end in that moment. Chapter 3, Please Call Me Qi Tian Da Sheng. With a soft click, the dim lights of the small convenience store were switched off, and the boy in the raincoat gradually faded into the night. This night, Lin Feng had seen the tragedy before, just after finishing his night shift. However, he was so scared that he ran away. That's right, he was just a freshman who had just finished his college entrance exam. Faced with 3 thugs holding knives, he was naturally no match for them. So, when he saw the woman's desperate pleading eyes, he chose to escape. For that beautiful woman, it was the hope she had clung to, only for it to vanish in an instant. How hopeless must she have felt? After that night, countless times, as he lay awake in the dead of night, Lin Feng could still remember that woman's pitiful gaze and her blooded face, asking him why he didn't save her. In truth, the tragedy was just a result of the family fighting over an inheritance. That beautiful woman was the daughter of the leader of a gang in N city, in other words, the boss's daughter. Her subordinates were mostly from nightclubs, karaoke lounges, and the newly emerged internet cafes. But she also had a half-brother. To prevent her from taking the inheritance, he had ordered her death. In a twisted way, this was ironic. Less than 6 months after the incident, there was a nationwide crackdown on prostitution and organized crime groups, including those with mafia-like traits. Most of her brother's stolen assets were seized in one go, and he was sentenced to death. Isn't it better to obey the law? Why resort to criminal activities? Lin Feng hated people like that, those who lacked skills and resorted to sneaky methods. He read about it in the newspaper years later when he was already a sophomore, but this incident never left him. It was like a thorn in his heart, constantly reminding him and painfully pricking his nerves. For a long time, the boy was filled with self-doubt and sensitivity until he met that girl. Lin Feng walked slowly into the alley, the rain seeping through his raincoat and soaking his short-sleeve shirt. But he remained still, as if a predator hiding in the dark, waiting for the right moment to strike. Left Jingwen was at the end of her tether. The 4 men behind her were clearly not easy to deal with. After dinner with her father's former subordinates, despite being referred to as little brothers, they were actually big shots in the gang. After her father's death, the once subservient people began to reveal their true intentions, all eager to seize her family's assets. Among the 4 kings, Li Qian and Chen Biao were on her side, but Liu Sheng and Wang Anguo were a bit ambiguous. The dinner tonight was meant to solidify her authority and shake off her half-brothers Willa, who had been pestering her. Left Jingwen had originally planned to return home, but Wang Anguo, a top figure in the gang, had kept her back for a private conversation. Wang Anguo, as the third-ranking member of the gang and one of the 4 kings, had to be given face. In the end, Left Jingwen had no choice but to drive home alone. But just when she arrived here, her car suddenly stalled. That wasn't all right. Behind her was a black Sonata. 3 thugs got out, each carrying what seemed to be sharp weapons. The moment she stepped out of the car, the rain quickly soaked her form-fitting skirt. Unfortunately, wearing high heels, she twisted her ankle as soon as she stepped down. Hee, little girl, don't run. This is a dead end. The voice came through the rain, and Left Jingwen's steps quickened. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have run. She had practiced martial arts with her father since she was young, and even a few men couldn't approach her. But because she was so beautiful, the rough guys in the gang always called her a tomboy. However, tonight she had drunk too much, and in her rush, she had twisted her ankle. Hee, you'll entertain us tonight, and we won't do anything too bad, one of the hunched thugs sneered. Another young man in black warned, Hunchback, you know what we're here for tonight. Xiao Ma is right. If we mess this up, we're all dead. The young man with the dagger added. The hunchback waved his hand. All right, I get it. Just be quick about it. The alley wasn't too long, and they quickly reached the end. Left Jingwen was now completely desperate. Just as she reached for her phone to call for help, she realized she had left it in the car. Hee, why stop running now? The hunchback, walking at the front, seemed to want to do something. Who are you? I Left Jingwen, having drunk too much and from the recent running, felt nauseous. She sat on the ground, her brow furrowed as she looked at the 3 men before her. The 3 thugs were all wearing black raincoats, their bodies completely concealed. Only blurry faces could be seen. The man with the dagger didn't hesitate. After getting approval from Xiao Ma, he charged, his glinting dagger cutting through the rain as he aimed straight for Left Jingwen's chest. The man didn't show any mercy, he only wanted to strike a lethal blow. Left Jingwen closed her eyes in despair. Due to the alcohol, her usual martial arts were useless tonight. A tear slid down her beautiful face and a deep pain spread from her heart throughout her body. Father, I'm sorry, I couldn't protect our family's legacy. She was at the brink of despair. Suddenly, the man with the dagger let out a scream, fell to the ground, clutching his crutch. Before Left Jingwen could react, a boy jumped out from behind a trash bin, raised a brick high, and slammed it into the thug's knee. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and the other 2 thugs had no time to react. Xiao Ma, this bitch is back up. The hunchback yelled, pulling a small knife from his pocket. Xiao Ma frowned and looked at the boy who had emerged, only to see a Sun Wukong. The boy, wearing a Monkey King mask, stood motionless in the heavy rain, holding a red brick in his hand. Left Jingwen was momentarily speechless. Between life and death, her face twisted with both sorrow and joy. But on the other hand, she was a little worried about the boy, because besides the unconscious thug on the ground, there were still 2 armed criminals before her. Be careful. Before anyone could react, Xiao Ma lunged at the boy, the blade aiming for Sun Wukong's abdomen. No matter who this boy was, killing one more person wouldn't matter. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes as he watched the thug charge. Earlier, his surprise attack had targeted the man's most vulnerable area, which was why it had been so easy to succeed. But now, things were more complicated. Xiao Ma moved quickly, like a leopard pouncing, his large hands expertly manipulating the dagger. Little Wei Ma Wen, still thinking of saving the beauty. Heh. Lin Feng glanced at the dagger's tip approaching him and slightly tilted his body, throwing the brick straight at Xiao Ma's head. Xiao Ma sneered and easily dodged the brick. Finished. Left Jingwen's fleeting hope vanished again, but more than that, she was worried for the boy. For someone like her, a woman, for him to risk his life, it wasn't worth it. But Lin Feng didn't panic. Instead, he opened a plastic bag and threw a handful of white powder into Xiao Ma's face. Ah! My eyes! Xiao Ma immediately dropped his dagger and began rubbing his eyes. The lime powder, mixed with rain, instantly began to emit thick white smoke. Xiao Ma's entire face was smoking, creating a terrifying scene under the rain. Lin Feng kicked Xiao Ma's knee, then did a roll on the ground, picking up the fallen dagger and thrusting it into the hunchback's thigh. Blood quickly seeped out but was soon washed away by the rain. You bastard, dare to sneak attack me! Before the hunchback could finish his words, Lin Feng kicked him in the most vulnerable spot. Hissed. The kick knocked him out cold and Lin Feng sat down on the ground, breathing heavily. This boy, was he an angel? In just 3 minutes, these 3 experienced thugs were knocked out by this seemingly frail boy. The rain gradually stopped. Xiao Ma still groaned on the ground, his face covered in white powder, a whole bag of it. Lin Feng ignored Xiao Ma and slowly walked toward the woman, looking down at her. She was a beauty, but there was something else about her, an enchanting beauty. The dim streetlight cast its yellow glow on her exquisite face, her neck slightly recoiled, her messy hair draped to one side. Her large eyes sparkled as she looked up, the tears on her face blurring her makeup. Her lips parted slightly, making her even more captivating. Lin Feng sighed and through his Monkey King mask, said softly, "Get up now. It's all over." He then reached out his hand. Left Jingwen gazed into the bright, determined eyes beneath the mask, and a warmth spread through her. The boy's gaze felt like the comforting warmth of winter sunlight. Even years later, no matter how high the boy rose in life, he would always be the boy wearing the Monkey King mask in her heart. You are. Lin Feng smiled under the mask. He, please call me Qi-Tian Da Shen. Chapter 4, Meeting Again, feels familiar. Hearing the boy's voice, Zhu Jingwen chuckled softly. This really is my little monkey. The boy wasn't very tall and appeared somewhat frail, but his physique was excellent, especially his resilient build, which gave him a unique charm. Lin Feng didn't want to get involved in this mess because it was too deep for him to navigate. In his past life, when they were cracking down on organized crime, it took the intervention of the armed police to uproot this century-old family. Moreover, he despised the criminal underworld not because he was particularly righteous, but simply because he preferred to follow the law. Zhu Jingwen had been in the underworld for many years. Ordinarily, anyone would call her sister when in respect. However, tonight's situation had caught her off guard. When Lin Feng helped her up, she had already regained her composure. She casually threw off her high heels and stood in the rain, lifting her stunning face to meet the determined gaze beneath the Sun Wukong mask. She whispered, "Thank you." Lin Feng waved his hand, pointing to the 3 thugs lying on the ground. He asked in a low voice, "What should we do with them?" Zhu Jingwen said nothing. Instead, she slowly walked over to her Benz, quickly opened the door, and pulled out a silver phone. Lin Feng took one look and recognized it as an Ericsson, a little rich girl. "Hello, Xiao Huzi, get a few people and bring them over to deal with a few guys. West Side Alley." Lin Feng hadn't expected her to call the police. Of course not. A prestigious gang boss's daughter, someone destined to control the entire gang, couldn't possibly call the police over an attempt to assault her. What would that do to the gang's reputation? How could she ever face others? Once Zhu Jingwen finished the call, she noticed Lin Feng, who was covering his ears. His expression seemed to say, "Sister, I didn't hear anything." Zhu Jingwen pursed her lips, then glanced at the 3 thugs. Frowning, she noted that although they were unfamiliar faces, they must recognize her. Her Benz was like her ID card in city, it opened every door. Perhaps it was the sudden appearance of Lin Feng during her moment of despair, or perhaps it was his odd fighting style, or his small and frail body paired with that comical mask that made Zhu Jingwen feel a sense of reliance on him. It felt like when she was a child, resting in her father's arms, feeling safe. This boy's calm demeanor made him seem not like a teenage boy, but more like a cunning old fox. Little brother, what is your name? Sun Wukong. He. Zhu Jingwen had to admit that this little guy was quite clever. Whether it was the Sun Wukong mask on his face or his self-proclaimed title of Qiqian Die Shen, it all pointed to the same thing: he didn't want to get involved, didn't want to be dragged into the thugs' conflicts. It was strange to see such maturity in a boy like him. All women are emotional, especially those who have experienced life and death situations. And all women are curious, especially someone like Zhu Jingwen, a woman who had been in control for so long. Beep, beep. The sound of car horns came from behind. Lin Feng turned to see 6 cars approaching. Sister Wen, are you okay? Before the cars even stopped, a young man with only one arm jumped out, wearing a tank top. His white tiger tattoo on his chest was barely visible, and the weapon in his hand was clearly noticeable, which made Lin Feng feel uneasy. He couldn't help but step behind Zhu Jingwen. The 6 cars brought nearly 30 people, most of whom were armed. Zhu Jingwen noticed Lin Feng's discomfort and smiled inwardly. Little guy, trying to act tough. You're scared, aren't you? He was just a kid, ha ha. Sister Wen, are you alright? When brother who called, we rushed over. Yeah, we were all scared. The 30 thugs around them began speaking one after another, showing just how much respect Zhu Jingwen commanded. Zhu Jingwen waved her hand and said, take the 3 of them back and interrogate them. Got it, Sister Wen. The thugs moved quickly, tossing the 3 men into the trunk of one of the cars. There's one more thing. Get my brother. Zhu Jingwen was about to ask them to send Lin Feng home, which would reveal where he lived. But when she turned around, the boy wearing the Sun Wukong mask had already disappeared. Xiao Huzi walked up. Who was that? Is someone there, Sister Wen? Zhu Jingwen smiled and said, nothing, let us go home. Little monkey, you'd better hope I don't find you. After the brief delay, Lin Feng didn't get home until almost 10:30. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the lights on in the living room. His father, Lin Yuanting, was sitting on the couch grading papers, while his mother, Wang Fang, was reading a magazine nearby, her eyes occasionally glancing toward the door with a worried look. It felt so good to be home, with both parents there. Dad, Mom, I'm back. I missed you guys so much. Lin Feng shouted with excitement. Enough, why are you so late? His mom didn't give him any face, rejecting his attempt at a hug and diving straight into the questioning. Aya, the kid has grown up, why are you nagging so much? Lin Yuanting took the ink reservoir out of his fountain pen and dipped it into a bottle of red ink. Your dad. I'm just concerned about him. Isn't this your son? If he wasn't your son, I wouldn't care about him. Lin Feng saw that his mom was about to blow up, so he quickly explained, it was raining heavily, I had to wait for a bit before I could come back. Wang Fang gave him a look. Have you eaten? There's some food in the pot, go heat it up and eat. I'm going to bed. With that, she didn't bother with him and walked into her room. Lin Yuanting patted his son's head, then looked at the exam papers. Your hair is wet, go eat and take a shower after. Don't catch a cold. After that, he became a ruthless grading machine again, marking errors. Well, this family is just like it was in my past life. Nothing has changed. A lot of people want to grow up quickly, to break free from their family and do whatever they want. But what they don't realize is that when they wake up in the middle of the night, it's still that same family they miss the most, the family they remember the most. The next day, Lin Feng had a strange dream all night, thanks to Anton and then Zhu Jingwen. The dreams were a bit too inappropriate for someone his age. So much so that he woke up early to change his underwear. When he saw the old furniture at home, Lin Feng realized that he had truly returned to his past life. Since he was back, he knew he had to do something big. What was that big thing? He would make up for all the regrets from his previous life. Xiafeng, what are you daydreaming about so early? Go eat breakfast and get to work. Well, for now, he was just a summer intern at a small convenience store. After breakfast, Lin Feng went out. It had been too dark last night for him to look around, but today, walking through the familiar streets, breathing in the unpolluted air, and taking in the nostalgic sights around him, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. Before he knew it, he had reached the convenience store. From a distance, he saw an Yinrong standing in front of the store, dressed in a black long skirt and white sandals, exuding an elegant, simple charm. What excited Lin Feng even more was that beside her stood a young girl, someone who looked about his age. Taking a closer look at. Well, it was a girl Lin Feng knew very well. Chapter 6 Oscar-winning actor-level acting. The employees in the small supermarket also noticed what was happening at the door. Although they were hooligans, some people were not afraid. The young and middle-aged men who were responsible for unloading the goods also rushed over quickly. The boss, Fatty Wang, took the lead and walked over with 2 workers. Let's see who dares to make trouble in my territory. He would naturally not miss this opportunity to be a hero and save the beauty. After all, he also favored an Yanron. What caught his eyes was a woman he had never seen before. She was looking at him with a smile, but her eyes revealed a chilling taste, like a charming venomous snake, quietly looking at him in the dark. Looking to the side, Fatty Wang almost knelt down. The man standing next to him turned out to be Brother Hu. Don't look at this man with only one arm. What he did was much more tragic than this. Fatty Wang once saw him chasing a group of people and beating them. But what surprised him was why Brother Hu came today. Could it be that he fell in love with this woman in his store? If that's the case, it's such a pity. Brother Hu, why are you here? I've already paid the environmental cleaning fee for this month. Fatty Wang changed his usual arrogant look and looked humble, calling a man much younger than him Grandpa. Were you who laughed, Boss Wang? I just came to take a look and accompany my sister to take a look around here. Sister Wen had just spoken, and the real purpose could not be revealed. So were you who naturally didn't dare to say anything. But Fatty Wang, the idiot, misunderstood. He glanced at Zhu Jingguan and thought she was Wu Yuhu's little lover. He came today just for an Yanron, the young woman. Thinking of this, Fatty Wang waved his hand to let an Yanron and other employees go to work first. Brother Hu, the one who is right, is an employee of our store. Her husband just died and her life is quite tight. Fatty Wang's voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. When Wu Yuhu heard this, he almost died of anger. Sister Wen is right next to her. What she hates most is robbing decent women. This old guy is putting me on the fire. Bang! Wu Yuhu hit Wang Pengzi's head directly. What are you talking about? This is our Sister Wen. She came here today for something. Sister Wen. That's Sister Wen. Suddenly, a terrifying voice sounded in Wang Pengzi's mind. Could it be that female devil? Zhuhu's eldest daughter, the underground female emperor of the entire N city. Although Zhuhu is dead now, she is also the first heir in name. In fact, just like this, it's nothing. The most important thing is that this woman is even more cruel and ruthless. Although she looks charming, she is actually extremely vicious in her heart. She can do anything. Looking at the smiling woman in front of him, Wang Pengzi felt as if he was looking at a smiling tiger, as if it would pounce on him and swallow him in one bite in the next second. Sister Wen, I didn't know you were coming. I'm sorry for not welcoming you. Fatty Wang didn't care about face at all, because whoever wanted face now would be doomed. Zhu Jingwen's charming peach blossom eyes narrowed slightly, and the dignified smile on her face seemed a little easygoing. That friendly look was as gentle as the sister next door, and there was no trace of the air of a superior. Boss Wang, don't be nervous, we just go in to buy something. The woman's voice was very cold. Although the voice was not loud, it revealed a tone that could not be opposed. It was a kind of pressure from a superior. The several younger brothers around were already nervous, because they all knew that when Sister Wen smiled, life and death were unpredictable. Okay, welcome. It's really my honor that you can come to my supermarket. Zhu Jingguan didn't say anything, but nodded, walking alone in the front, followed by a group of younger brothers, quite like a boss. Today, the woman did not wear the hip skirt and flesh-colored stockings she wore yesterday, but a pair of sky blue jeans and a white short-sleeved top, which reduced her charm. Even so, her every move revealed a woman's unique charm. Zhu Jingguan actually noticed a person outside, the boy standing next to the cashier. But he was quickly excluded because when he saw Xiao Huzi teasing the young woman just now, he obviously hid to the side. It's not that he is timid, but compared with the calm boy last night, the two are far apart. So Zhu Jingguan ignored him and looked at other people in the store. There was almost no one at that time last night, and it was raining heavily, so there were even fewer people on the street, so the shrewd Zhu Jingguan concluded that the boy either lived nearby or worked here. The reason why she wanted to find this boy so much was because she had a thorn in her heart. The calm and defensive eyes under the mask made this mature woman feel a little painful. Boy, do you sell Monkey King masks in your store? A ferocious-looking young man asked Lin Feng arrogantly. Also, who was the last person to leave the supermarket last night? Wu Yu, who supported the front desk with both hands, picked up a bubble gum and put it in his mouth to chew, and blew a bubble soon. Pop, the bubble burst and stuck to Wu Yu's face, making the ferocious face look a little cute. Dear brothers, I don't know, there should be something behind the Monkey King mask. Lin Feng said tremblingly, pointed to the toy area of the supermarket, and looked at the men in front of him with horror. A younger brother beside him smiled. What are you afraid of? We won't eat you. Speak nicely. Wu Yu glanced at Lin Feng and couldn't help but look down on him in his heart. How can such a tall boy be like a caterpillar? What is there to be afraid of? He raised his only arm and pressed Lin Feng's shoulder twice, in a tone of educating the younger generation. What Wu Yu didn't know was that this timid boy today would be one of the best in the entire N city, and even the entire China in the future. That harmless and cowardly appearance was just the disguise of this demon. In the future, Wu Yu often talked about this matter, thinking back then, I also patted Mr. Lin on the shoulder. You don't know. Little tiger, can you lower your voice? Don't scare people. At this time, Zhu Jingwen, who had been observing from the side, spoke up to stop him. The woman's voice was very soft. At this time, there was no domineering of a superior, but on the contrary, there was a kind of gentleness of a sister next door. This boy is obviously a nerd who has never seen the world. It seems that he is working here during the summer vacation. How can he be the angel who fell from the sky last night? After teaching her little brother a lesson, Zhu Jingwen showed a beautiful smile, like a plum blossom in winter, charming and attractive. Little brother, did anyone come here to buy things last night? Lin Feng blushed, showing the kind of embarrassment he showed when he saw a beautiful girl, just like an honest and simple innocent boy. Although he looked like this, he had been complaining in his heart. I am so tired of pretending. It's so hard. Although he thought so in his heart, he was afraid that the shrewd woman in front of him would see something, so he hurriedly said, Sister, no. No, I was the last one to leave. What? I didn't see anything. The boy's voice was stuttering and almost inaudible, and his eyes were a little evasive. He didn't dare to look at Zhu Jingwen's beautiful face. Lin Feng now felt that it was a loss if he didn't get the Oscar for Best Actor. Wu Yu next to him couldn't help but say, what the hell, why are you stuttering? Can't you speak? While saying this, he patted Wang Pengzi's back and said, Boss Wang, why did you find a stutterer to work as a cashier here? Is it okay? Wang Pengzi, who has always been timid, was also panicked. Usually, this boy seemed to be quite generous. Why did he fail at the critical moment? Quickly said, Xiao Feng, what's wrong with you? Just explain it clearly. Zhu Jingwen also frowned and looked at Lin Feng at this time. This boy was indeed a little too introverted, and he was completely different from the boy last night. One bent his body, his eyes dodged, his voice trembled, and he didn't even dare to look directly at her face. The other was brave and resourceful, with an upright body and a firm and bright look in his eyes. He left after the matter was done. Maybe even Zhu Jingwen didn't realize that she couldn't forget that boy. Chapter 7. This sister is so beautiful. The small supermarket is particularly lively today. The 2 or 3 second-rate guys standing at the door make people who come to the supermarket a little scared. Because these days, it's easy to mess with the devil, but hard to deal with the little devils. Especially at the beginning of the new century, due to the spread of some Hong Kong community movies, the blood of unemployed young people in society was completely aroused. These people are unscrupulous in learning, imitating, and even surpassing. But no matter how you say it, it is always a crime and will eventually be punished by law. The net of heaven is vast and nothing can escape it. In the supermarket, and Yinrong was looking at the boy in the distance with a worried look on her face. In order to avoid the harassment of those gangsters, she went to the back as soon as she entered the supermarket, but she saw that group of gangsters were making things difficult for Lin Feng. Looking at the panicked and helpless look on the boy's face, the maternal love in the young woman's heart began to overflow. Especially when she thought of the scene where the boy risked his life to save her yesterday. What a good beautiful boy. Being embarrassed by these disgusting people. Although the so-called sister Wen looks beautiful, she is probably the same as these gangsters. What if she has any evil thoughts in her heart? And Yinrong looked at the Sun Wukong mask they were looking for next to her, and seemed to have made a decision in her heart. Boss, this sister is so beautiful, I'm a little nervous. The voice was not loud, but it sounded like thunder in the supermarket, shocking everyone a little dazed. Wu Yu was already full of admiration for this boy. He was a ruthless person. The younger brothers around were also confused, weren't they? You've been holding it in for a long time. Fatty Wang's eyes were black, and he didn't know what to say. He just wanted to sew Lin Feng's mouth shut. It would be better if he said this to a girl from an ordinary family. But Zhu Jingwen is not an ordinary girl. She is a person who sneezes and the whole city of N will tremble. Sister Wen, children are ignorant, don't take it to heart. Fatty Wang wiped the sweat with one hand and bent over to say. Zhu Jingwen was a little absent-minded. It's not that no one had praised her before. In college, many boys pursued her, but most of them came for a purpose. What was revealed in her eyes was nothing more than lust for her beauty and desire for power. But the boys' eyes were full of innocence, which was a natural love for beautiful things. When her father was there, those people didn't dare to act rashly. After her father left, some people took advantage of her being a woman. Haha, it's okay, what are you afraid of? Isn't appearance for others to see? Zhu Jingwen waved her hands were as white and delicate as mutton fat jade. Although her aura made people feel depressed, the gentleness in her tone made people feel like spring breeze. The cold and warm made this woman's charm more. Zhu Jingwen was about to ask something else, but a woman's voice came from behind. Are you asking about this mask? Zhu Jingwen was slightly stunned. As soon as she turned around, she saw the beautiful woman at the door. She didn't know if it was because of anxiety, but her face turned rosy, making her already mature and beautiful face even more charming. I didn't look carefully outside just now. The woman was wearing a black long skirt, which reached the top of her white jade-like calves. She looked very noble and elegant. She was really a wonderful person. The suspicion that Zhu Jingwen had just suppressed rose again. Yes, it's this mask, thank you. Seeing Zhu Jingwen take the mask, and Yinrong was slightly relieved. Fortunately, she didn't embarrass Xiaofeng anymore. Looking at the relieved expression on the young woman's face, Zhu Jingwen's doubts reached the extreme. According to common sense, such a beautiful woman would not care so much about an ordinary introverted and timid boy. And she knew that a group of people were not easy to mess with. Isn't this a little sheep sending itself to the big bad wolf's mouth? She believed that the beautiful young woman in front of her, who looked very smart, was not a brainless woman, so the problem was still with the boy just now. Sister Wen. Don't you know what's special about this thing? It must be said that although Fatty Wang was a little lustful, he still had a conscience. He was afraid that the attention of several people would return to Yinrong, so he quickly took over the conversation and asked. Zhu Jingwen glanced at Lin Feng and chuckled, hee, it's a little brother's toy. He lost it and insisted that I buy him another one. The younger brothers around had to admire that Sister Wen's lying skills were getting better and better. In fact, to put it bluntly, it was just thick-skinned enough. But from another perspective, it can be seen that this woman's mind is deep. What's the point of buying or not? It's your own child, just take it to play. Fatty Wang said with a smile on his face. He didn't know what was going on. He just thought that Zhu Jingwen's child was making trouble and wanted toys, so she was in such a hurry. Zhu Jingwen smiled slightly, took the mask from Yinrong and then put it on the cashier at the door. Little brother, please calculate how much it is. Although she was talking seriously, Lin Feng always felt a little awkward. Especially her eyes, although full of smiles, but still felt that there was endless scrutiny and temptation under the smile. Well, $1. Although the boy was still a little withdrawn, he had made great progress compared to before. Zhu Jingwen still had the same expression, with a smile on her face, a pair of peach blossom eyes slightly narrowed, like a big sister, gentle and dependent. Lin Feng quickly collected the money and gave her the change. I don't know if it was Lin Feng's illusion, when handing over the money, the woman's slender fingers seemed to slide in his palm. Lin Feng was shocked in his heart, but his face was still introverted and honest. How could the way of interaction between lovers be used on him? Taking the change, Zhu Jingwen retracted her smile, put her hands behind her back, and looked like a leader. Okay, Boss Wang, we won't disturb you from doing business. After saying that, she walked out the door, followed by a large group of younger brothers. Wu Yu, who was a little confused, and his mind was a little confused. What is Sister Wen doing? When did she have a younger brother? After telling Fatty Wang that he didn't need to send her off, he quickly followed. He now has a lot of questions in his mind. Looking at Zhu Jingwen's back as she left, she looked like a big boss. After Fatty Wang saw Zhu Jingwen walking away, some mockingly said, Xiaofeng, you are still too young and have too little experience. You need to practice more. After saying that, he glanced at Yinrong's figure. Okay, everyone get busy, nothing to do. Then he went to check the account books for the past few days. After all, Fatty Wang is a greedy person and the accounts have to be checked almost every day. Xiaofeng, don't listen to him. Compared with him, you don't know how much better. And Yinrong was afraid that the young man's mentality could not stand the ridicule, so she hurriedly comforted him. Lin Feng looked up at Aunt Rong in front of him with a concerned face and was moved in his heart. It's okay, Aunt Rong, thank you just now. Thank you for what, but? And Yinrong's face seemed to be slightly red, but more entangled. The expression that seemed to say something made her feel depressed. Looking at Aunt Rong's hesitant expression, Lin Feng was a little confused. But what? Just based on your young people's aesthetics, is sister Wen pretty? And Yinrong didn't know why she asked such a question, and to an 18-year-old boy. A different taste suddenly appeared in the air. These words she had never said to her relatives who had lived with her for many years. She regretted it, but she was more confused, wondering why she was like this. Lin Feng was stunned and laughed in his heart. It turned out that Aunt Rong was such a lovely person. Aunt Rong, how could it be? You think too much. She has nothing. How could I think she is pretty? Then why did you just That was just flattering her. Compared with you, she is like a bright fire. How can she be compared with the sun and the moon? Listening to the boy's praise, and Yinrong was a little confused. Is this still the timid boy just now? It's really bold. Such a pure boy would say such words. It's just a child. The mentality of a young man is nothing like this. Thinking of this, and Yinrong spat lightly. Heh, you didn't seem so jumpy just now, why are you acting differently in front of me? Am I easy to bully? After saying that, she walked to the back alone without waiting for Lin Feng's reply. She didn't know what was wrong with her, and she said so many silly words again. Chapter 8. We meet again. There are many great figures in the long river of history, but when they look back on their lives, they will also miss that ordinary period. As the saying goes, it was just ordinary at that time. The rhythm in the supermarket was not disrupted by what happened just now. Everyone was doing their own job, picking up goods, unloading goods, filling and replenishing, and labeling. Most of them were in charge of the area they were in charge of. It was a normal scene in the supermarket. There were a few workers who had just finished unloading goods at the door, sitting together and chatting. Who was that well woman just now? She looks prettier than the one from the Liu family, especially the look at TSK. A worker in a white vest said with a cigarette. Keep your voice down, that woman is the daughter of Master Zhuo, and now she is a top figure. Another middle-aged man with greasy hands said. I think we should just take a look at that, feast our eyes, and don't think too much. A group of people heard this and looked at an Yinrong who was introducing laundry detergent to customers in the distance. You'd better not discuss it, or you'll die ugly. A man wearing glasses said at this time. You don't know how scary she was before. The man's voice instantly attracted the attention of the unloading workers around him. People are gossipy, let alone these street villains. A sturdy man said sinisterly, what do you mean? Four-eyed boy. Do you know? Hearing them call him four-eyed boy, the man with glasses was not annoyed, but slowly said, actually, I used to drive for a rich boy, the kind of driver. Oh, can't you tell? You used to. Shut up and listen to him. The man with glasses took the cigarette handed over by the person next to him, then squinted his eyes and took a puff, exhaling circles of smoke. That was a few years ago, I was still driving for a rich kid's house. That was when we went out for fun. The rich second generation fell in love with a woman, and that woman was the one just now. The man paused slightly when he said this, then looked outside, and after making sure there was no one, he slowly said. Then the rich second generation pestered her, but the latter ignored him. One time he couldn't bear it anymore, so he prepared to drug the woman and force her, but he didn't expect that the woman found out his trick and was caught on the spot. The man with glasses stopped talking here and stood up, ready to continue unloading. This made the people around who were listening to the story anxious. No. Why don't you finish your words? Yes, you stopped talking when it was just getting exciting. What happened in the end? People around started to talk, and some even stood up, planning to pull him to ask him clearly. The man with glasses sighed as he looked around, then said, that morning, I went to pick him up as usual to go out and mess around, but I saw a scene that I will never forget in my life. The villa that was tall and gorgeous the day before was empty the next day. Overnight, not a blade of grass grows. After saying this, the man with glasses went to unload the goods, and the people around him all took a breath of cold air and dared not speak for a long time. Then they stopped talking and went about their own business. Lin Feng at the door also heard the general idea and was a little scared in his heart. What the man with glasses said was true, and it might be even more exaggerated than this. After all, the Zhou family was all-powerful in city back then, and they could do whatever they wanted. Thinking of this, Lin Feng began to wonder about the movement of Zhou Jingwen's palm just now. It slid about 2 or 3 times, which was not like the normal movement of taking things. Lin Feng was not narcissistic enough to like someone at first sight. Even when he pursued his wife Liu Wei in his previous life, he pursued her for a long time. So there must be something strange. On the other side, it was still the black Mercedes-Benz. Zhou Jingwen sat lazily in the back seat. Recalling the shy look of the boy just now, her peach blossom eyes were a little absent-minded. If he is really shy, then he is really an interesting little boy. Zhou Jingwen did not expect that she would have made a mistake today. Wei Yuhu, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, was a little confused. Sister Wen, which brother are you talking about? The younger brother who was driving also pricked up his ears to listen. After all, he was also very curious. When did the unattainable and scheming sister Wen have a brother? But there was no sound in the back seat for a long time. After a long time, a faint voice came. Haha, you investigate someone. No, I'll go and see it myself. Dusk. No matter when it is, the dusk is charming. Chinese people have a different emotion for dusk, especially when they watch the setting sun, and infinite affection rises in their hearts. And Yinren, who had been busy all day, also stopped her work, looked at the boy in a white short-sleeved shirt in the distance, and listened to the announcement of the sale in the supermarket. It seemed that only at this moment, the harassment of foreign debts, the pressure from creditors, the family expenses, and even the loneliness buried in the heart were all relieved at this moment. Lin Feng did not have to work the night shift tonight, so he handed over his work early and prepared to go home early, because he had not felt the warmth of his family since he came back. Aunt Rong, I'm leaving first, see you tomorrow. The boy did not have the embarrassment of facing Zhou Jingwen this morning. Instead, he greeted her generously, with the enthusiasm of a young man in his eyes. This Aunt Rong awakened the young woman from her contemplation, causing the latter to be stunned. It took a long time to recover. Well, see you tomorrow. The woman showed a mature and beautiful smile, as if she had only restored her status as an elder at this time. And city number 6 middle school teacher's family quarters. Lin Feng looked at the old residential area, and infinite sighs rose in his heart. He had lived here since he could remember. The house was allocated by his father Lin Yuanting from the school. The price was relatively low, but it was full of Lin Feng's infinite memories. In his previous life, he did not move out until he married his wife, but he often came back. Especially when his wife wanted to find the excitement of love again, Lin Feng would definitely send his daughter here. Just as Lin Feng was reminiscing about the good times, a car horn sounded behind him. Lin Feng thought it was blocking the road, so he moved to the side. Before he took 1 or 2 steps forward, the horn sounded again. It seemed to be directed at Lin Feng, which made him a little annoyed. What? It's great to have a car. How expensive can a car be these days? Although he can't afford it at the moment, it's not something that can be humiliated casually. He wanted to see who the owner of the car was, because there were only a few families with cars in the compound, and Lin Feng could check them all with one hand. But when he saw the car, he was stunned. Because it was the black Mercedes from last night. How could it appear here? Lin Feng was shocked, but he did not panic. Instead, he quickly dodged to the side, just like a pedestrian avoiding a car. Maybe he just came to the family compound for something, and it should have nothing to do with him. But the fact is just the opposite. The black Mercedes slowly drove to Lin Feng's side and then stopped. The window of the driver's seat slowly lowered, and Zhou Jingwen's beautiful face gradually appeared. A pair of peach blossom eyes looked at Lin Feng with a smile. Little brother, we meet again. Chapter 9 Ambiguity. The dusk has quietly ended, and the night is slowly falling. The cool evening breeze blew the bangs on the boy's forehead, revealing a calm and defensive look. The black Mercedes-Benz was very conspicuous in the school's family compound, attracting the attention of countless teachers returning home. Zhou Jingwen looked through the car window at the boy's bright eyes, as if she had returned to that desperate night. The calm and majestic eyes still made people feel at ease. Isn't this the angel who saved her from the water and fire that night? However, the boy's next words broke this beautiful feeling. Sister, what a coincidence, are you looking for someone here? Lin Feng quickly reacted. How could the middle-aged man's mind be so unbearable? He hurriedly said nonsense. Looking at the boy's innocent handsome face and a somewhat shy look, Zhou Jingwen felt a little pain in her heart. Is she so unbearable? Or are the things that a group of people do so defensive? There are many times when what she does is not in line with the rules, but it is all for the development of the club and for the property of her family not to be coveted. Brother, I'm here to find someone. Oh. Lin Feng now has an ominous premonition in his heart. Looking at this woman who should have died, there may be an invisible thread that binds the two people tightly together from the moment he saved her. Even if they are thousands of miles apart in the future, they will feel each other. Do you know where the Monkey King lives? I have something urgent to do with him. Zhu Jingwen said with a joking expression, with a signature smile on her face. The Monkey King? I don't know. Is there such a person in our courtyard? Is he a brave and fearless person like Sun Wukong? Hearing this, Lin Feng knew that he was suspected and could only act according to circumstances. The boy was still changing the subject, looking around, as if he was preparing how to leave, or afraid of being seen by acquaintances. Zhu Jingwen stared at the boy with her beautiful eyes for a long time before she said quietly. The great sage equaling heaven is not a person who dares to do things but not to take responsibility. Zhu Jingwen, who was usually cold and serious and decisive in killing, now spoke in a weak tone, which made Lin Feng unable to resist. Not to mention that he was still a young man in this life, even if he was in his 30s in the previous life, he would be shaken. After all, men are young until death. This kind of contrast temptation is so tempting that even a monk would be tempted. Lin Feng quickly chanted Amitabha in his heart, Sister, if there is nothing else, I will go home first. My mother called me to go home for dinner. Well, then I will go up and sit down and ask Auntie what time you got home last night. Zhu Jingwen's tone was obviously cold. Her face, which was gentle and amiable just now, became extremely cold now, like a piece of ice, which made people feel cold in their hearts. Lin Feng was also stunned when he heard her words. It was obvious that she was threatening him with his family. The boy was a little angry, his fists clenched slightly, and his eyes were no longer tense and fiery, but only the suffocating eyes of last night. Instantly, the atmosphere began to change. Noticing the change in the boy's demeanor, Zhu Jingwen also smiled gently and stretched out a white and tender hand out of the window. Great sage equal to heaven, I wonder if I am lucky enough to treat you to a drink or a bottle of Coke. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The boy who was slightly angry outside the window and the woman who stretched out her hand to invite him in the car formed a beautiful picture. This picture was deeply imprinted in the hearts of the two people, and they have not forgotten it even after several years. Later generations called this invitation, romance is boring, but once you meet a good person, you will be together for life. Blue Moon Bar. It is hard to say that the bar owner was very attentive. This bar at the beginning of the century actually had a kind of later style. Both the booths and the lighting were top-notch. There are many murals on the wall, including watercolors and oil paintings, which shows that the owner of the bar is also an elegant person. The bartender at the front desk was concentrating on mixing the wine in his hand. The colorful liquid, under the light, exuded an attractive glow. In the innermost private room, there was no fancy decoration inside, just an ordinary home decoration, with a black leather sofa on one side and a color TV opposite. There was even a refrigerator next to it. The woman bent down and took out a bottle of Coke from it, and took a can of beer from the other side. Sister said, I just want to treat you to Coke. Zhu Jingwen put the Coke in front of Lin Feng, and sat next to the boy generously. A woman's scent hit me in the face, but it didn't smell like a strange perfume, but a warm feeling. Lin Feng looked at the Coke bottle in front of him. It was not a plastic bottle in later times, but a glass bottle in the early years, which looked like a soda bottle. Since he had come here, Lin Feng no longer hesitated. Opened the Coke bottle, inserted the straw on the table into it, and took a sip gently. A cool feeling burst out in the mouth, without the tingling and bubbles of later times, but more of a sweet taste. How do you know it's mine? The boy's voice sounded in the box, with some doubts. Zhu Jingwen didn't speak, but opened the can, raised her head and took a sip. The yellow liquid slowly flowed down the corner of her mouth and flowed to her white neck. She stretched out a soft hand and wiped it gently, and the casual action did not take into account the difference in status between the two people. Then she said faintly, What? Don't you even call me sister now? The voice was like crying and complaining, with the coldness of a queen and the blame of an elder, but more of a kind of coquettish blame. Sister Zhua, how did you find me? If it were Lin Feng, who was 18 years old, he would naturally be unable to resist her. But now he has decades of experience, let alone other things. This temptation is far from enough. In his previous life, Lin Feng was able to remain calm in so many social events, so this is nothing. Looking at the boy's eyes that did not change color at all, they were still so clear and transparent, but unlike other young people, there was a trace of imperceptible calmness in those bright eyes. You know, Zhu Jingwen's charm is not something that ordinary people can resist. From childhood to adulthood, no matter when, Zhu Jingwen must have been the focus of everyone's attention. Countless men would be attracted by her charming face at the first sight of her. Even some big guys, when discussing things with her, couldn't help but look at that beautiful face a few more times. But now the boy can speak neither servile nor arrogant, and is not affected by her who is only a finger away from him. Although you are wearing a mask, what I see is your eyes, and... After Zhu Jingwen finished speaking, she moved directly to the boy, then stretched out a jade hand and gently grabbed Lin Feng's right hand. Look, the lime water has broken the skin. She looked concerned and even a little anxious. Lin Feng looked down and saw that there was indeed some redness and swelling between the fingers, and even some places had some broken skin. Okay, what do you want? At this time, Lin Feng no longer cared about his hand, because most of Zhu Jingwen's body had already come over. I don't know what to do. A man and a woman are alone in a room, and they are so close to each other. One is a club girl, high and mighty, arrogant and incomparable, and the other is a handsome boy, sitting aside in a somewhat submissive manner. A charming atmosphere rises between the two. Looking at the boy who saved her on a rainy night, Zhu Jingwen's long-forgotten heart beats violently. It is an unprecedented feeling, sweet, penetrating through the pores all over her body, directly into Zhu Jingwen's heart. Just then, the door of the box was suddenly opened, and Wu Yuhu's ferocious face stretched in, just about to say something. She was stunned by the scene in front of her, so she wanted to pretend to be blind and get away with it. But the next second, she was hit by a beer can. Get out! Chapter 10 Heart-to-Heart Talk. Everyone in N City knows that the Zhu family is not easy to mess with, especially Zhu Jingwen, the eldest daughter of the Zhu family. It is almost a taboo that no one dares to mess with. After her father's death, she was able to support the entire society and suppress other opposition forces, especially her half-brother Zwilla. She crushed him with absolute strength and made Zwilla dare not act rashly. But such a woman just sat so intimately with a boy. Wu Yuhu felt that he was dreaming. Sister Wen actually sat with a boy and held his hand. The affectionate look just now, if he opened the door a little later, maybe the two of them would do something. I can't tell that Sister Wen actually likes boys. Of course, he didn't dare to say this in front of Zhu Jingwen. Having said that, I really haven't seen Sister Wen treat any man like this before. Rubbing his head that was hit by the can just now, Wu Yuhu decided to stand at the door today. Of course, he was definitely not eavesdropping, he was simply afraid that other brothers would disturb Sister Wen's good deeds. In fact, other brothers didn't dare to come. In the private room, the atmosphere began to become awkward. Lin Feng didn't expect Zhu Jingwen to be so proactive, and the worried expression was indeed a bit overwhelming. Zhu Jingwen originally just wanted to tease her. It wasn't that she was so unrestrained, but the boy next to her was really too attractive. Obviously, he was a boy of 17 or 18 years old, but he dared to fight 3 knife-wielding thugs with a brick. That calm look was like an old fox who had been immersed in society for many years. It was about to end, but who knew that the bastard Xiao Huzi broke in? In fact, she didn't know in her heart whether she was really moved in the situation just now. Ha ha. Lin Feng laughed. Sister Zhua, what's wrong? Do I have any gold in my hand? Why did I let you look at it for so long? The boy's ordinary words made Zhu Jingwen blush, and she quickly let go of the boy's hand. Little tiger, come in. Wu Yuhu, who was eavesdropping at the door, ran in and shook his only arm. Sister Wen, I didn't see anything. I promise. Okay, bring some medicine, my brother's hand is injured. Zhu Jingwen held her hands in her arms and said with a stern face. Lin Feng lowered his head silently and said nothing more. Wu Yuhu ran out happily as if he had received an imperial decree. Because the brothers were often injured, there were many medicines in the bar. Do you hate me very much? Just when Lin Feng pretended to be confused, the beauty next to him said faintly, her tone full of discomfort and unwillingness. How could it be? Sister Zhua is so beautiful, no man would ignore her, right? Lin Feng said seriously. Zhu Jingwen pursed her lips, opened another can of beer, raised her head and took a sip. Ha ha, you're just fooling me. The voice was not loud, but clear to the ears, as if she was lying next to Lin Feng's ear, full of grievances. For so many years, Zhu Jingwen was alone. She didn't dare to reveal her inner thoughts to others, because everyone could be against her, for the supreme status, for the wealth that could not be spent in several lifetimes. When her father was alive, she could discuss everything with her father. But after her father died, she closed herself off and stopped communicating with others. So the rumor of such a cold-blooded woman spread. Sister Wen smiles, life and death are unpredictable. But she is just a woman who needs to hide under the arms of a man. It was Lin Feng's turn now. This woman was too sensitive. It might be because she had been alone for many years that she became like this. Thinking of this, Lin Feng's heart softened and his words became tender. Sister Zhe is as beautiful as a fairy. I feel ashamed of myself after seeing her, but I have no intention of looking down on her. Lin Feng said seriously again. Looking at the serious look of the boy, Zhe Jingguan was also distracted for a while and whispered. Oh, then why did you show that look that night, and why did you pretend not to know me this morning? Yes, it's not that Zhe Jingguan likes Lin Feng so much, nor is she curious about him. She tried every means to find him just for the obsession in her heart. That night, the pitiful look of the boy under the Monkey King mask was a kind of pity, but also defensive and calm. Lin Feng was stunned when he heard this, and he sighed in his heart how powerful this woman was. That night, he just gave her a look, and she saw all his thoughts in his heart. This woman's shrewdness can be seen. If anyone marries her in the future, I am afraid that she will find out if he makes a small move. On the other hand, if she had not died in the previous life, would the society not fall in the future? Or even develop better? Since I have come back to this life, I will make this society go back to the right track and stop degenerating. No more illegal and criminal acts. Sister Zhe, do you know? I didn't actually want to save you that night, but when I saw your delicate and beautiful face covered with dirty water on the ground, I felt a desire to protect you. Lin Feng paused, then put on the Sun Wukong mask on the table. I was afraid that my ability was limited, and if I failed, it would bring disaster to my family, so I wore the mask. As for the look in my eyes, it was just a look that wanted to protect you. To say something from the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to protect you and keep you from getting hurt. The boy's sudden words made Zhe Jingguan's cheeks instantly hot. This cold iceberg woman was also moved at this time. Lin Feng ignored the woman's blushing face and still went all out, talking to himself. This morning, I didn't wear a mask. When I saw you, who was as beautiful as a fairy, I was naturally very flustered. Not to mention admitting it, I'm even a little scared to talk to you. It has to be said that these words are really impeccable. Although there are some contradictions in some details, Zhe Jingguan, who has always been shrewd, didn't notice it. I don't know if she saw through it but didn't say it, or because the boy's words were too touching, she was obsessed with it for a while and couldn't extricate herself. Lin Feng looked at Zhe Jingguan, who was stunned and didn't know what to say for a while. He could only say this about what happened just now. After all, he couldn't tell her that he was reborn and the reason he saved her was to make up for the regrets of his previous life, right? Zhe Jingguan pursed her lips lightly. I don't know if it was because of drinking, but her charming peach blossom eyes became blurred. Her red lips tightened and the can in her jade hand fell to the ground. Are you telling the truth? Really? Really, it's true, truer than gold. Before Lin Feng finished speaking, the woman suddenly moved forward, staring at him with her eyes, making him feel a little breathless. Slowly, the beauty in front of him began to tremble, as if she was crying. Or as if she was trembling with excitement. A pair of jade hands gently took off the mask on Lin Feng's face. Looking at the handsome boy in front of her, Zhe Jingguan said softly, "You will be my brother in the future. Don't be too restrained. What's mine is yours. In this life, I will never leave you, forever and ever, and I will always be with you." Zhe Jingguan thought to herself, although she didn't know whether the boy's words were true or not, but what bad thoughts could a blushing child have? Chapter 11 Planning. The bar was still noisy. For some people, the real nightlife had not yet begun. This was just an appetizer before it started. Were you who didn't know whether he should go in now? What if he went in and disturbed Sister Wen again? Zhe Jingguan's murderous look just now made him feel frightened now, but he couldn't ask other brothers to go, in case they saw something they shouldn't see. In the end, he was the one who suffered. Forget it, let's die. The moment Wu Yu who opened the door, he finally understood what it meant to be with a king like a tiger. In the room, the boy was concentrating on drinking Coke, and the Coke bottle in his hand seemed to have a great charm, making him stare at it closely. Zhe Jingguan looked bored, playing with a strand of hair beside her ear, twisting and tangling it back and forth in her jade hands. Hearing the sound at the door, Zhe Jingguan's face turned slightly cold. "I asked you to get a wound medicine, why did it take so long?" Wu Yu who was sweating profusely, thinking that if I wasn't afraid of disturbing you, I would have come back a long time ago. Sister Wen, this little brother, the wound on his hand cannot be treated with ordinary medicine. I went to buy special ointment myself. Zhu Jingwen's expression eased after hearing this. She reached out to take the ointment, squeezed the ointment into her palm with her other jade hand, and then took Lin Feng's hand and began to apply it to the broken skin. Does it hurt? Looking at the red back of the broken skin, Zhu Jingwen's heart tightened, and her hand movements could not help but be a little lighter, blowing on the wound lightly, with a little coolness. While blowing air on the wound, she applied the medicine with her jade hand. Although the two people said such words just now, Zhu Jingwen quickly said that it was just the feelings between the younger brother, and there was nothing else. Lin Feng only felt that his wound was numb, which made him unhappy. Wu Yu, who next to him had already prepared to leave, because if he stayed any longer, he might die. Embarrassed to death and killed by Sister Wen's eyes. Wait. I asked you to interrogate those people, how did you do? Because Wu Yu, who was present, Zhu Jingwen didn't get too intimate, so she sat up straight and asked in a cold tone. Wu Yu, who was shocked again, Sister Wen, I can't get anything out of them. Those three people seem to have appeared out of thin air, and their backgrounds are so clean that it's scary. Zhu Jingwen didn't speak, but held her temple with one hand, narrowed her eyes as if she was thinking, and finally sighed. She glanced at Lin Feng and gently wiped his neck at an angle that the boy couldn't see. Sister Zhu, can I tell you what I think? Lin Feng, who had been standing by, said weakly, put down the Coke bottle with one hand and raised his pretty face. Sister Zhu, I think there is something wrong with what happened that night. It's not that Lin Feng wants to intervene in this matter, but seeing Zhu Jingwen wiping her neck, he felt a little reluctant. Since he had already recognized her as his sister, he would no longer hide it. Wu Yu, who felt funny in his heart. A little brat, wouldn't he think that after being favored by Sister Wen, he could decide her mind, right? Although Sister Wen was a little overbearing and strong, she was not so overbearing as to be influenced by a little boy. But what he didn't expect was that Zhu Jingwen changed her cold expression to a gentler look, and her eyes became tender. Zhu Jingwen also wanted to see what this boy, who was almost a demon, thought of this matter, and what was behind his tender face. In fact, Lin Feng had a god's perspective on this matter, so he had already understood the whole story, but he had never had the chance to tell Zhu Jingwen. You can't just tell her that your half-brother wants to get rid of you, and the murderer is him, right? Lin Feng changed his elegant and easygoing appearance just now, raised his eyelids slightly, and looked at Wu Yu, who standing in the distance with a sharp gaze. Wu Yu, who was also stunned there, and was a little flustered for a while. No. I asked you to tell me your opinion, why are you looking at me? Am I the traitor? Do I want to harm Sister Wen? Wu Yu, who is almost kneeling down to him now. What if Sister Wen believes the slander of this boy and directly asks someone to kill her? Who can she cry to? It has to be said that Wu Yu is a straightforward person and doesn't think so much. Zhu Jingwen saw the concerns in Lin Feng's eyes at a glance. Brother, it's okay, Xiahou Huzi is one of us. Trust him. Lin Feng retracted his gaze after hearing this, lowered his head and drank a sip of Coke, looking like a big boss. Wu Yu cursed in his heart again. If you don't want me to listen, just say it earlier. You think I am willing to listen to your private talk, and you scared me. Sister Zhu, how many people know that night you went home alone? Zhu Jingwen thought for a while and slowly said, many people, including my men and other uncles, had dinner together that night. Lin Feng paused after hearing this, took out the straw from the Coke bottle and then connected the ends into a ring, put it on his fingertips and started to rotate. He did not question the loyalty of the uncles, but slowly said, whose interests are affected by your actions this time, and who will benefit the most if something happens to you, sister? Zhu Jingwen began to think about it after hearing this. It's not that she didn't think about this problem before, but she didn't think deeply about it. There is only one person who benefits the most, and that is Wu, the bastard. Before Zhu Jingwen spoke, Wu Yu, who next to her, couldn't help shouting, and he was more and more determined to tear Wu into pieces. Lin Feng shook his head slowly. No, it's far from enough for him alone, and he doesn't have the courage. Zhu Jingwen naturally thought so in her heart. If not, she would have gone to Wu to settle the score long ago. In this situation, she no longer cares whether Wu is her half-brother or not. But if someone wants to sow discord and reap the benefits, then it becomes reasonable. You mean? The communication between smart people is often limited. Lin Feng doesn't know what the truth is. After all, the newspapers in the previous life would not be written so clearly. The struggle between societies has always been mostly secretive and hidden. Ordinary people naturally don't know what happened. But Lin Feng has the experience of being a human being for 2 lifetimes, so he can naturally infer from the existing clues and even get it right. Zhu Jingwen was naturally shocked when she heard the boy's words. That night, Wang Angua, one of the 4 kings, invited her to talk, and then something happened. If there was no problem, no one would believe it. Originally, she thought that even if those old ministers of the previous dynasty were dissatisfied, they would use legitimate means to conquer everyone's hearts and defeat her in person. But she finally overestimated her status as the eldest daughter. People's greed will never stop, they always want more and then more. Before the boy finished speaking, the sky blue straw between his fingers was spinning vigorously, like a colorful butterfly flying on it. The enemy is in the dark, we are in the light, so it is naturally difficult to deal with, but don't we still have minions? Lin Feng's wee made Zhu Jingwen feel extremely warm and safe, and the young man's strategic look also made the woman look sideways. Wu Yuhu was confused. If Zhu Jingwen hadn't been beside him, he had to get to the bottom of this boy. But they. Zhu Jingwen naturally heard that the boy still wanted to make a fuss about these 3 people. Sister Zhu, people are social animals. As long as they are still alive in the world, they must have a family. A few traces of cruelty flashed in the boy's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, he fiercely tore the ring between his fingers apart, and a few drops of dark color splashed out of it, as fast as a human had been separated. The eyes and actions made Wu Yuhu, who was always cruel and ruthless, frightened. Didn't it say that he was just a little man of Sister Wen? Why is he now more terrifying than Sister Wen? Zhu Jingwen was startled by Lin Feng's sudden words, but in the blink of an eye, the old fox who was so cruel just now instantly turned into a harmless look. Sister, it's just a child's words, just listen to it. Lin Feng stood up slowly, without looking at Zhu Jingwen's expression. Sister, I'm going home, thank you for the coke today. Zhu Jingwen said in a deep voice, it's so early, and then. It's obvious that she hasn't recovered from Lin Feng's transformation, and her eyes are still a little confused and puzzled. Oh, children have no human rights. If you're late, your butt will be in trouble. Puff, the woman laughed out loud, looking at the helpless expression on the boy's face. Zhu Jingwen's heart moved. No matter how calm and profound he is. Now he is just a blushing little brother. What Zhu Jingwen didn't know was that her small heart had been filled with this boy who was many years younger than her. Chapter 12 Dizziness. At the beginning of the century, most ordinary families did not have TVs, color TVs were still rare. Anyone who bought a mobile phone was a very powerful person. The black and bulky mobile phones have not yet withdrawn from the stage of history and are playing their last remaining warmth. So let alone computers and high-tech products, which are a fantasy for ordinary families. Most people who have eaten at night like to chat and walk in the yard, especially some intellectuals who like to get together to discuss their children's studies. General. Lao Li, you lost again. It's time to buy watermelon later. Lin Yuanting pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said proudly. Before dinner, Lin's father was driven down by his wife to see why his son had not come back yet. Oh, Teacher Lin is amazing. No, let's play another game to decide the winner. The doorman Lao Li smiled with dissatisfaction, as if he wanted to win back a game. As soon as Lin Feng entered the number 6 middle school staff quarters, he saw his father playing chess there, surrounded by a large group of spectators, mostly teachers from the staff quarters. In fact, Lin Feng didn't want to say much tonight. After all, he didn't want to interfere in some things. He had already changed the trajectory of history, so things would definitely not develop according to the original trajectory. But seeing Zhu Jingwen's beautiful face and recalling her fleeting life in her previous life, Lin Feng couldn't help but feel pity in his heart. If he hadn't intervened, the tragedy might have happened again. Well, it's just that Lin Feng is lustful. But he also wanted to save that woman, guide the society back on track, and stop committing illegal and criminal acts. Just as Lin Feng was thinking about what happened tonight, a voice suddenly came to his ears. Xiao Feng is back, and is handsome again. A middle-aged woman holding a fan shouted, and the eyes of the people in the compound instantly looked over. Basically, everyone in the compound watched Lin Feng grow up, and many people even taught him. This middle-aged woman had taught Lin Feng chemistry before, and Lin Feng was also the representative of the chemistry class, so she naturally favored him. Teacher Wang, have you finished your meal? I finished it a long time ago. Why are you back so late? Your father has been playing several games of chess downstairs. Lin Feng was about to speak when his father waved his hand. Xiao Feng, hurry upstairs, or your mother will nag again. Although he said so, he was still holding the cannon in his hand, staring at the chessboard. After dinner. Lin's father sat on the chair again, correcting the students' homework. Although it was summer vacation, many students, especially the children of teachers in the courtyard. At the request of their parents, they had to come to the tutoring class. Wang Fang was still knitting a sweater in her hand, and she was still discussing things with Lin Yuanting. Lin Feng was sitting aside, thinking about the problem with a dazed look in his eyes. He was still a little uncomfortable with his young body, but his mind had jumped out of the current situation. Leaping to decades later, standing decades later, looking at the whole world. In the past few decades, due to the rapid development of the internet, the country and the world have undergone earth-shaking changes. Although this is the case, these major events have nothing to do with him. The most pressing matter now is the affairs of his wife and her daughter. The hundreds of thousands of foreign debts have already overwhelmed their lives. According to his wife Liu Wei, in the future, the hundreds of thousands of foreign debts were framed by Liu's father's boss leader. The purpose is for the beautiful woman in Yanrong. This is also why Lin Feng specially approached Wu Jingguan today, because some things cannot be solved by conventional means. Then some shameful methods must be used. Xiao Feng. What are you daydreaming about? Can't you hear me when I talk to you? Wang Fang frowned and looked at Lin Feng. Is her son in love? Since he started working in the summer vacation, he has become absent-minded. Oh, Mom, I'm thinking about something, what's wrong? Lin Feng hurriedly said with an apologetic look, fearing that his mother would get angry again. After all, Wang Fang was still the one who made the decisions at home. Your father went back to his hometown today and brought some sesame leaves. Go and bring some to your Aunt Man. She likes to eat them. Oh. Ji Yushiman, a charming young woman, is more than 10 years older than Lin Feng. Now she is a teacher at an university where Lin Feng is about to go. Her father was also a teacher at No. 6 middle school before. Before he died, he had a very good relationship with Lin Feng's grandfather, so good that they were almost like one. Usually, the relationship between the two families is like that of relatives, but Ji Yushiman's parents died very early. Since they lived in a large compound, the Lin Feng family treated her very well. When there was something good, the first person they thought of was her. According to the route in his memory, Lin Feng knocked on the old anti-theft door. Who is it? Come on. The door creaked open and a beautiful young woman leaned out and smiled charmingly when she saw the person coming. Xiao Feng is here, come in quickly, Aunt is mopping the floor. Ji Yushiman turned sideways, put the mop aside, and moved her charming body to the side to make room for Lin Feng to come in. Since Ji Yushiman's father had a very good relationship with Lin Feng's grandfather, Ji Yushiman was usually very nice to Lin Feng. Aunt Man's house was not like his own house, where all the clutter was piled up everywhere. Instead, everything was in good order. There were several potted plants next to the living room, and a color TV stood in the middle. The house looked very simple and clean. Lin Feng was not too restrained, but walked in openly, put the sesame leaves aside, and sat down on the sofa with a plop. He had been here countless times, and it could only be said that it was more familiar than his own home. Ah, Aunt Man's house is still clean, fragrant and clean. Ji Yushiman dipped the mop in water, smiled and said, how come you are still chattering after not seeing you today? If my brother and sister hear this, you will probably... Before she finished speaking, she saw the wound on Lin Feng's hand, threw the mop aside, walked over in 3 or 2 steps, and said nervously, what's wrong with this hand? Why is it rotten? The gentle tone revealed concern, and the evening breeze brought a charming smell, which made Lin Feng enjoy it. It's okay, I just accidentally touched some lime water in the supermarket and burned my skin. While talking, Ji Yushiman had already brought the medicine box over. You are so old and still don't make people worry, is it because the supermarket only lets you work? While speaking, her 2 jade hands applied ointment on Lin Feng's palm, and the tingling feeling rushed from the palm to the forehead. The concern in her tone was even more virtuous, which made Lin Feng squint his eyes. Aunt Man is really virtuous. I wonder if that bastard will get the upper hand in the future. In the previous life, until Lin Feng had a car accident, Ji Yushiman had not married. This also made Lin Feng feel strange. How could such a beautiful and virtuous woman not have anyone chasing her? Auntie is talking to you. Did the people in the supermarket bully you? Auntie will go to them. In Ji Yushiman's impression, Lin Feng has always been timid. He was a little scared to talk to her, not to mention those old-timers in the supermarket. So she thought someone was bullying Lin Feng at the first time. No, I was just careless. Soon, Lin Feng's hands were smeared with white, and the original color could not be seen. Take the ointment home, and remember to apply it several times a day. Looking at the mature and pretty face close at hand, Lin Feng has begun to feel proud. After all, he is no longer a teenager, but a mature soul. Seeing beautiful things, the heart can't help but appreciate them. Seeing that Lin Feng didn't reply for a long time, Ji Yushiman looked up at the boy with a puzzled look on her face, but she saw Lin Feng staring at her face. What's wrong? Is there something dirty on my face? Because Lin Feng was just a child in Ji Yushiman's eyes, she naturally wouldn't think of it in a dirty way. Aunt Man, you are so beautiful. Hearing this, Ji Yushiman's mature and pretty face slowly flushed a few times. She was not angry, but said with some anger, if Aunt is really beautiful, why haven't you married at this age? Ji Yushiman was not angry. After all, no woman doesn't like others to praise her beauty, and Lin Feng is a junior who grew up under her care. What bad intentions can he have? It's just a compliment to the elders. But Lin Feng's next words made Ji Yushiman feel dizzy. Lin Feng swallowed his saliva and said slowly, or I will marry you. Chapter 13. Lin Feng was ignored. Basically, all men have a charming woman wandering in their minds during their teenage years. Whether they are pure, mature, beautiful, or gentle, they are the first love that men dream of countless times at midnight. When they were restless in their youth, this was the only comfort in their hearts. For Lin Feng, Ji Yushiman is not only a woman, but also an indispensable person in his life. He can't help but admire this excellent, charming and virtuous young woman. He still remembers the scene when he told his mother about his thoughts. He remembers that his mother Wang Fang was so angry that her lips turned white and she slapped him directly. She chased him far away with a chicken feather blanket and beat him all over his body. In the end, he stayed at his classmate's house for a long time. The reason why Wang Fang had such a big reaction was mainly because Ji Yushiman's father and Lin Feng's grandfather were better. To be honest, Ji Yushiman was Aunt Man who watched Lin Feng grow up. This is his aunt. Even rabbits don't eat grass near their nests. And there is a generation gap between the two of them, more than 10 years apart. This is no joke. Listening to the words from the boy's mouth, Ji Yushiman frowned obviously, her face obviously turned cold. Looking at Lin Feng in front of her with a serious face, she sighed softly and then returned to that gentle smile. Okay, don't make Aunt happy here, go home quickly. A pair of jade hands touched Lin Feng's head, as gentle as touching a puppy. Can't I comfort you? I'm kidding, Aunt Man. Lin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he regretted it as soon as he said that. What happened to him? Lin Feng, what kind of person are you? You still want to marry Aunt Man? It means that Aunt Man is gentle and generous and she won't argue with you. If it was someone else, she would have hit you with something long ago. Okay, you're still comforting me, you little kid. Ji Yushiman touched Lin Feng's forehead with her slender fingers, then stood up and started mopping the floor with a mop. But what Lin Feng didn't notice was that when Aunt Man stood up, a strange look flashed in her eyes. After a while, Ji Yushiman finished mopping the floor, put the mop back in the bathroom, and sat next to Lin Feng with a book, legs together, reading seriously. Ji Yushiman is a Chinese teacher at N University. People who are engaged in literature generally have a unique temperament, not to mention that Ji Yushiman is born beautiful, which makes her feel intellectual and elegant. Put the sesame leaves here, I'll leave first, Aunt Man. Lin Feng glanced at the time and said goodbye and went home. After all, he had to get up early to go to work tomorrow. Well, it's getting dark, go back slowly. Ji Yushiman stood at the door and watched Lin Feng's back as he walked down the stairs. The book in her slender hands floated gently and her seductive red lips slightly raised. She sighed in her heart, summer job is quite a training, such an honest child. Shaked her head, reached out to close the security door, and walked in thoughtfully. Morning. Lin Feng got up early and started exercising. His body was still so immature that no one took him seriously, especially women. When I thought of Aunt Man's indifferent expression last night, I felt helpless. But then again, why didn't Aunt Man get married? I remember that in my previous life, I got married and my children were grown up, but Aunt Man was still alone and she was still gentle and virtuous. When it comes to Ji Yushiman, no one in the compound doesn't give her a thumbs up. Virtuous, virtuous, and virtuous. Not only is she gentle and generous, but she is also kind and elegant to others. She speaks softly to everyone. She is simply the best candidate for marrying a wife. Lin Feng was running and thinking about random things when he suddenly saw a familiar figure in front of him. He stopped slowly and looked at the girls in front of him, feeling a little confused. The person in front of him was Liu Wei, his future wife. There were 3 people in front of him besides Liu Wei, 2 girls with heavy makeup on their faces and a yellow-haired boy who was looking at Liu Wei. Some people will be the focus of the whole audience no matter where they go. It is obvious that Liu Wei is the most beautiful one among the few people, like a fairy who is independent from the world. Several people seemed to be discussing something, and everyone had a strange expression on their face. Xiao Wei, are you sure you want to work in the bar? It's very tiring here. One of the girls said. The other girl seemed to have some concerns on her face. Sister Xiaochen, let's forget it, Xiao Wei is not suitable. Before the girl named Xiaochen spoke, the yellow-haired boy next to her smiled and said, we are all classmates, how can I cheat you? It's very easy, just bring some wine. Liu Wei bit her lip. In order to help her mother ease the situation at home, she had to find classmates in the class before the college entrance examination to see if there were any part-time jobs. Okay, I'll try. Lin Feng slowly approached and heard the last sentence, my wife wants to try. Try what? Hello, Sister Xiao Wei, we meet again. Lin Feng greeted with a smile on his face. It must be said that handsome guys are popular there, and Lin Feng now has a mature temperament. The 2 girls next to her suddenly became crazy about him. Xiao Wei, who is this? Could it be your boyfriend? Oh, I can't tell, Xiao Wei, you are such a good kid, but you are. The 2 girls seemed to have a good time with Liu Wei, and they joked beside her. He is nothing, just an ordinary friend. Seeing Lin Feng next to her, Liu Wei was stunned. It was obvious that she didn't expect to meet him here. Liu Wei was obviously angry. Normally, Liu Wei would not be so anxious. With her mentality, at most she would say hello with a smile and then go her own way. But the boy in front of her was different. Thinking of her mother's praise for him, she looked like she was looking at her future son-in-law. This made Liu Wei feel very uncomfortable. He was just an ordinary boy. At most, he was handsome. Why did his noble and elegant mother give him such a high evaluation? Well, what a coincidence, aren't you going to work today? Liu Wei spoke to Lin Feng with a cold face. She looked like a stranger. This look also gave the yellow-haired man next to him a signal, making him think that Lin Feng was just a harasser of Liu Wei, and he began to plan in his mind. Wu Jun is Liu Wei's high school classmate. He has been in love with her for 3 years in high school, but this girl is cold to everyone. It seems that everything has no attraction to her. Oh, I got up early to exercise and planned to run a few laps before going to work. Lin Feng replied seriously. Liu Wei nodded and didn't say much. Instead, she said to the 3 people, just do as we said just now. Let's go eat first. Lin Feng was embarrassed when he heard it. Good guy, just ignore me. Chapter 14 Worry. The peers in front of him didn't seem to take Lin Feng seriously, thinking that he was just an ordinary pursuer of Liu Wei. After all, for Liu Wei, this is the most normal thing. Since high school, Liu Wei has inherited her mother and Yinrong's beautiful face and a pure temperament. Naturally, she has been pursued by countless people, and countless excellent boys are around her. But because of her arrogant personality and cold personality, no one has been able to get close to her until now. As Liu Wei's pursuer, Wu Jun naturally didn't give Lin Feng a good look. He held his hands in his arms and turned his head to the side. Although his family didn't have any power, he had been familiar with the gangsters in society for a long time, so he naturally developed the ability to judge people. Boys like Lin Feng were bookworms who were stupid because of studying. Wu Jun had seen many such bookworms. They were easy to bully. Just a few harsh words would scare them to kneel down. One of the girls, Guo Zhuan, smiled and said, then handsome boy, we'll leave first. See you again if we are lucky. Lin Feng nodded and didn't say anything. Looking at the backs of the people leaving, Lin Feng knew in his heart that his wife Liu Wei was a strong woman. Whether she was a girl or married to a wife, she was always a tough guy. I remember that before she was reborn, every time she wanted to pursue happiness, she had to find an excuse, saying that the 2 elders wanted to see their granddaughter. In front of the cashier. Looking at an Yinrong who was cleaning in the distance, Lin Feng's unhappiness disappeared instantly. Today, an Yinrong wore a white long skirt, which was very slimming and matched her flawless white skin. If black is mysterious, this white skirt gave her an inviolable sense of nobility. On her legs were normal flesh-colored stockings, and on her feet were a pair of black sandals. It was really pretty, but even if this outfit was put in the future, it would still be confusing. He finally understood why his wife was so beautiful, and it turned out to be here. It seems that his rescue plan should be put on the agenda. In his previous life, the tragedy happened around the beginning of school in September. Thinking of this, Lin Feng began to plan in his mind. While An Yinren was mopping the floor, she was placing the goods on the shelves, and her eyes were looking at the door from time to time. These 2 days, those debt collectors did not come, so she was naturally very relaxed. But many times in her dreams, she would dream of the scene when Lin Feng pushed her away to prevent the goods from hitting her. Maybe it was because that kind of reassuring feeling was good. "Aunt Rong. Aunt Rong. A guest is coming." And Yinren, who was in a daze, was startled for a moment. The boy had approached her without her knowing. Lin Feng was a little confused. Just now, a customer wanted to buy an iron pot. He was not familiar with it. He called Aunt Rong for a long time, but there was no response. What's wrong?" And Yinren quickly put the mop aside, her face slightly flushed, and asked softly. "This grandma wants to buy an iron pot. Go and introduce it to her." And Yinren saw the old lady with wrinkles on her face and a cane in her hand, and then she reacted. She cursed herself for being useless and showed a beautiful smile. "Old lady, what kind of one do you want?" Looking at the back of Aunt Rong leaving with the customer, Lin Feng always felt something was strange. Soon, the supermarket was already crowded. Today was Sunday, and many people came to the supermarket to buy some things to make a sumptuous meal for their families. Or the husband's razor, the child's pencil, and the necessities for the elderly at home. This made Lin Feng very busy. He was a cashier, but he had to be asked many things. This supermarket was not as clearly divided as in later generations. The cashier was at the door, and the exit and entrance were at the same location. Many people asked directly when they came in, and then asked Lin Feng to take them there. Just as he led an old man to the place where benches were sold, Lin Feng heard someone calling him from behind. "Xiao Feng, why are you here? Hurry up, there is an urgent order for you to go." The boss, Fatty Wang, was panting heavily, speaking anxiously, with a strange look on his face. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. "What? Blue Moon ordered a lot of beer just now and asked you to deliver it. Get in the car and go with Lao Li. There must be something going on. Blue Moon Bar." A stunning face flashed through Lin Feng's mind, "Isn't it? You don't have to think about it to know that it's Wu Jingwen's doing again. What his sisters were going to do. In the box." The woman crossed her legs, the slippers on her feet showed her laziness, a pair of charming peach blossom eyes looked at the door, a cup of tea was rarely placed on the table, and a few strands of tea leaves were floating on it. A pair of jade hands gently flashed the tea fragrance on the cup, handed the cup to the red lips and took a sip, before she had time to savor it. She heard a voice at the door, "Sister Zua, you don't know how busy I am." A young man in white pushed open the door of the box, walked in boldly, walked to the refrigerator door without any hesitation, took out a cup of Coke with his left hand, inserted the straw with his right hand, and started drinking. "Oh? What? So I helped you?" Zhu Jingwen chuckled, put down the cup in her hand, and looked at the boy in front of her with a pair of beautiful eyes. "That's right. You don't know that when I heard Fatty Wang asked me to deliver the goods, I almost jumped up with excitement." Lin Feng was not restrained, but sat next to Zhu Jingwen with Coke. The black sofa instantly made a creaking sound, which seemed a bit harsh in the quiet box. Zhu Jingwen couldn't help but say, "Be gentle, or my sister's sofa will be broken by you." Originally, Zhu Jingwen didn't think there was anything wrong with this, but when she saw the half-smile on Lin Feng's face, she, who was as shrewd as a fox, understood it instantly. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and she wanted to be angry, but she didn't know where the anger came from. Looking at the innocent and somewhat cunning look of the boy, she laughed out loud. "Hee, forget it, you are my brother, everything in here is naturally yours, how can you say it's broken?" Zhu Jingwen shook her head and talked to herself, and put down her beautiful legs. Lin Feng drank Coke by himself, and the gurgling sound in his mouth seemed a little harsh. "Yesterday I asked someone to see, one of the men's wife was pregnant, and now she is in the box next to us." Zhu Jingwen said this out of the blue, which made people a little confused. Lin Feng put the Coke bottle on the table and said calmly, "Just meet directly, if necessary, we can. Now that we have found the person, the next thing is up to you. If you want to investigate thoroughly, there may be many obstacles. It may even..." Before he finished speaking, Lin Feng knew that Zhu Jingwen would definitely have his own methods. Asking him now might just be a reference. So he didn't say it too hard. Zhu Jingwen looked at the boy who was still smiling just now, and now he changed his appearance, like a tiger secretly planning. As calm and steady as a virgin, as decisive as thunder and lightning. This is the boy she likes, a boy. Zhu Jingwen certainly knew what Lin Feng didn't finish saying. It might just involve her so-called relatives, or even those superiors in the society. Chapter 15, Shocking Change. At the beginning of the century, most people were conservative, and feudal ideas were still spreading and had not been completely eliminated. In this age of conservative clothing, many people like new trends. However, some people think that black stockings are only worn by prostitutes, and if they are a little seductive, people will criticize them behind their backs. But different people wearing the same clothes will give people different feelings. For people like Zhu Jingwen, it will only look better. Noticing the boy's gaze, Zhu Jingwen reached out to tuck the black hair on her cheek behind her ears, and her bright peach eyes looked into Lin Feng's eyes. "Well, let's do as you say." Lin Feng nodded, and seeing that his words had taken effect, he stopped talking. Because it is not good to get too involved in some things. You have to find the right balance. Otherwise, even if Zhu Jingwen doesn't care, the subordinates will be dissatisfied and both of them will be in trouble in the end. He reached out and picked up the Coke on the table, took a sip with a happy look on his face, as if he had become that carefree boy again. "Sister Zhu, why are you drinking tea?" Seeing that the atmosphere was a little strange, Lin Feng immediately changed the subject and started asking random questions. Zhu Jingwen certainly saw what the boy was thinking, but still didn't say it out loud. Well, drinking caused trouble. If it wasn't for last time. The woman's eyes softened halfway through her words, and she couldn't help but be infatuated with the boy's handsome face. A strange feeling rose in the box, slowly rising like water about to boil, hissing and emitting hot steam. Of course Lin Feng knew what she meant, but he didn't expose it. Oh, it's better not to drink. Women tend to get fat when they drink too much. As soon as he finished saying this, Lin Feng regretted it. For women, especially a sentimental woman like Zhu Jingwen, you can never say she is fat. For women, age, measurements, and weight are absolutely private topics. If a woman takes the initiative to communicate with you in your life, then she is most likely interested in you. Oh? Am I fat in your eyes? Zhu Jingwen tilted her head with her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. She looked just like the big bad wolf coaxing Little Red Riding Hood, tempting and scary. How could that be? That's called plump, you don't know, According to common sense, Lin Feng graduated with a degree in Chinese language and literature, and he has decades of life experience, so it should be easy for him to compliment a woman, but now he is in trouble. Because those words are communication between adults, and they don't sound like anything a teenager would say. When she heard the word plump, Zhu Jingwen was slightly stunned. What a little adult. Why don't you say anything? I'm plump. And then? Zhu Jingwen asked in a pretentious manner, her body leaning forward unconsciously. Smelling the faint scent of a woman's body at the tip of his nose, Lin Feng could only play dumb. In fact, Zhu Jingwen is a plump type, but because she is not married and is young, she has a sense of purity, so that although she is mature, she does not look old. Then. Sister Zhu, oh no, I drank too much Coke and people are in a state of emergency. Lin Feng said as he ran towards the door. He. Zhu Jingwen lowered her head, drank the Coke in the boy's Coke bottle, and chuckled, drinking Coke will make you fat, right? After saying this, Tao Hua's eyes looked at Lin Feng closely, with a smile in them. Since it was daytime, there weren't many people in the bar. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. What was going on? According to common sense, Lin Feng was not afraid of Zhu Jingwen. However, the difference in age and status between the two of them made him not think about it. The beer just brought in from the supermarket was brought in by several young men and piled behind the bar. In the front, a guy was mixing drinks out of boredom. The back seems to be a place similar to a KTV for singing, divided into different private rooms. Who knows how many dark and disgusting things are hidden in this seemingly bright and beautiful box. In the peak tower, a group of young men were drinking the wine in their hands unscrupulously, and from time to time they poured it into the mouth of the hostess next to them, which frightened the latter. Brothers, let's celebrate together that Ding Xiao has finished his college entrance examination. The person who made this sound was called Li Bin, a construction boss, or to put it bluntly, a small contractor. He was not very old, probably in his 20s. But the young man he toasted was obviously much younger. At first glance, he looked like a student who had just entered society, with a somewhat immature face. The young man called Ding Xiao has an insecure and feminine look on his face, just like a Korean hip-hop boy. Under normal circumstances, Li Bin would not bother to talk to people like Ding Haibin, but there is a big project in the city right now. He urgently needed this project to make money, but Mayor Ding, who was in charge of the project, did not care about him, so Li Bin had to set his sights on Mayor Ding's only son. Although Ding Haibin was a little arrogant, he also had the awareness of being the son of a cadre, so he naturally knew why Li Bin invited him to dinner. Hey, don't worry, brother Li, I will mention it in front of my old man when the time comes. This is exactly what Li Bin wanted to hear. Children of cadres usually inherit the cunningness of their fathers and will not speak too harshly. But this way, it should be almost correct. Several young men nearby also laughed and said, "The girls here are all pretty. They are totally different from other places. The fathers of these people are basically from the same faction as Ding Haibin's father Ding Anshan. So naturally I usually play with him, and we are like snakes and rats in the same nest." Ding Haibin really enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention. He was immersed in the feeling of being a supreme emperor. "Send some more wine, and we'll move on after we finish drinking." Li Bin gave orders to his men, then pushed a scantily clad girl next to him over. There is no man who doesn't like wine and sex. Soon, the door of the box opened and two girls came in with a few glasses of wine in their hands. "Quick, put it here." Li Bin didn't care, but Ding Haibin next to him sat up directly and looked at one of the girls with green eyes. I didn't expect that there would be such a beautiful place like this. Liu Wei was originally responsible for cleaning up, but there were not enough people on the team that Guo Zhuan was responsible for serving the wine, so Liu Wei had to help. The girl had bright eyes and skin as white as if soaked in milk, and her cheeks seemed to be slightly red due to the stuffiness in the box. Because she was holding the wine, she didn't have time to tidy up the hair on her cheeks, and she exuded the temperament of a girl next door. Liu Wei naturally noticed the extremely aggressive gaze and quickly prepared to leave. "Sister, please wait a moment." Guo Zhuan beside him also reacted and turned around. "What's wrong? Is there anything wrong?" Ding Haibin stood up, a smile on his feminine face. "Go away, I'm talking about this beautiful lady." As he spoke, he moved closer to Liu Wei. The younger brothers beside him also made clicking sounds. They all knew about young Master Ding's bad habits, so they all looked at the chubby beauty in front of them with ill intentions. When Li Bin saw this situation, he secretly thought that something was wrong. I was about to speak out to stop him, but I calmed down because I needed help from others. "If you piss off the guy in front of you, you're done for." Looking at the girl at the door, she is indeed pure and cute, the type that playboy Ding Haibin likes. Torn between his future and his conscience, Li Bin chose the former without hesitation. Those who can come here to work usually don't have any family background. At most, after Ding Haibin is done with the matter, I can give her some money to settle the matter. Thinking of this, Li Bin gritted his teeth and stood up. Chapter 16 The Charm of That Kick. In the box of Lingsha Pavilion. Ding Haibin couldn't wait any longer. He had to pursue such a beautiful girl, just like he had done to other girls before. "My lady, could we go for a drink?" Ding Haibin, with his gentlemanly appearance and feminine looks, can be said to be very attractive to girls. He has always been confident about his appearance, but this time he miscalculated. Liu Wei waved her hand and said, "Go away." Then she walked straight to the door. Ding Haibin instantly felt embarrassed. There were so many younger brothers watching him, but this girl didn't even give him face. But his anger was soon suppressed. He liked this kind of girl who thought highly of herself. There was a girl who had a high opinion of herself before. After he succeeded in getting her, the feeling of defiling her beauty remained with him for a long time. Guo Zhuan also reacted at this time. As Liu Wei's classmate, she naturally didn't want anything to happen to her. "Brother, my sister is not available today, can I have a drink with you?" She has been working in the bar for a long time and knows what to say to different people. He slowly moved closer, ready to use himself in exchange for Liu Wei's departure. Ding Haibin looked at Guo Zhuan and sneered. What kind of person is this? How dare she come up and disgust him? But he didn't say anything and just waved his hand gently. The younger brothers around him understood what he meant and came up to pull Guo Zhuan over. "Little slut, Master Ding is busy. If you want to drink, drink with us." Yes, we promise to satisfy you, he he. The younger brothers surrounded Guo Zhuan. They couldn't touch the beauty Liu Wei, so it was a good idea to use this woman to vent their sexual desire. Li Bin also came over at this time and whispered, "Hey little beauty, how about having a drink with our Master Ding and I'll triple your salary?" In his opinion, the girls who come to work here are just doing it for the money, and as long as the money is in place, everything should be fine. Liu Wei snorted coldly. She naturally knew what kind of people they were. Since she was a child, she has been surrounded by such lechers, so she ignored him. She pursed her tender red lips lightly, with a hint of fluctuation in her eyes. The girl exudes a youthful aura, wearing a white dress, with a slender waist, slightly trembling calves, snow-white skin, and impeccable face. Compared with her mother, she is relatively immature, but she also has her own unique charm. Ding Haibin didn't care about anything else. Just as he was about to take action, the door opened and the blonde-haired Wu Jun rushed in. Just now he saw the two of them go in and didn't come out for a long time, so he thought something was wrong. Guozhuan is still okay, but if it were Liu Wei, with her angelic beauty, she would definitely charm those people inside. Sure enough, as soon as I came in, I saw a boy about to make a move. When Ding Haibin saw Wu Jun coming in, he was stunned, thinking that he was the boyfriend of this beauty, and his face became frozen again. Who are you? Wu Jun, come in quickly. They are going to harm Xiao Wei. Take her away quickly. Guozhuan said anxiously that this era is not like later generations and classmates are still very simple and honest and they really care about each other. Wu Jun. What are you doing here? Before Wu Jun could say anything, Li Bin recognized him instantly. He was just an ordinary gangster. He had had dinner with his boss and had met him a few times before. Although that's what he said, Wu Jun was just a wine pourer at the table to him, not even worthy of carrying his shoes. Brother Bin. This is my friend, how about we forget it? As a small gangster, Wu Jun naturally knew what was going on in this kind of situation. Ding Haibin's face changed when he heard this. He folded his hands in his arms and glanced at Li Bin. Why, do you know him? Li Bin now just wanted to beat Wu Jun to death. The matter was about to be accomplished. Wouldn't it be a bad thing for a bastard like him to come in? Wu Jun, how about I call your eldest brother and ask him to take you back? Li Bin said sinisterly. Don't. Wu Jun was indeed scared, because his elder brother was not a good person. If he really came, he might not stand on his side. But when he saw Liu Wei's pretty face that looked a little nervous, he gritted his teeth. At worst, he could just say that she was his partner. The boss wouldn't favor outsiders, right? Brother Bin, this is my friend, please be merciful. Seeing that he was so rude, Li Bin walked over quickly and said, do you know who he is? The son of Mayor Ding Anshan. When Wu Jun heard this, he was shocked and realized that he had offended a ruthless character. It is said that Ding Haibin is a playboy and many women have fallen in love with him, but they dare not speak out because of the power behind him. If I offend him because of a woman, there may be no place for him in N-City in the future. That? Well, get out now and don't disturb young Master Ding's fun. Wu Jun felt relieved when he heard this. What this meant was that he was not taken seriously. This is the best. Liu Wei, you can't blame me for this. Who made you be favored by Master Ding? Thinking of this, Wu Jun bowed towards Ding Haibin, looking like a lackey, and prepared to leave. Guozhuan saw this scene nearby and couldn't help but get angry. Wu Jun, you bastard. Are you still a man? Pa. A little guy next to her slapped her in the face. What are you screaming about? Be quiet. Ding Haibin made a tsk sound and said, hey. Can you guys be a little gentler? Why are you being so rude? After saying that, she reached out and poured a glass of wine on the table. It was a common mix of drinks in bars. It wasn't very strong, but for a girl, especially someone like Liu Wei who had never drunk alcohol, she basically got drunk in one glass. Beauty, can you give me a favor? Have a drink. Ding Haibin handed over the glass in his hand. Liu Wei's beautiful eyes flickered gently. It was not known whether it was because the box was too hot or because she was anxious, but her chubby cheeks had become redder and redder, like a juicy apple, which made people's heart beat faster. Don't want. There was an immense hatred in his eyes, and he bit his teeth lightly. He was already filled with deep regret in his heart, regretting why he had come here. Ding Haibin didn't care, but put the wine glass to the girl's pink lips, with his other hand behind her, ready to take action. Didn't you hear her say no? Just when Ding Haibin was about to succeed. With a bang, the iron door of the box was kicked open and a defiant voice sounded at the door. Everyone in the box was stunned. When they looked up at the door, they saw a young man in a white short-sleeved shirt. The boy looked young, but the steadiness and temperament he exuded made everyone inside look at him with a little surprise. After all, he dared to say such words in front of so many people. He is already far ahead of Wu Jun just now. Lin Feng had just seen the yellow-haired young man from this morning and realized that something was wrong. He took a closer look and saw that his wife was indeed inside. Therefore, Mayor Ding Anshan, who had been domineering in City N for many years, was dismissed, and Ding Haiban, the young master, was naturally retaliated by his former enemies. In the end, he ended up wandering the streets. Ding Haiban glanced at the thin boy in front of him and felt a little disdainful. He thought he was just another idiot who wanted to be a hero and save the beauty. May I ask what you are doing here? Li Bin, who was standing next to him, was confused for a moment and could only step forward to smooth things over. Lin Feng smiled and looked at Li Bin as if he was an idiot. How can someone in this bright and clear world force women of good character into prostitution? The people around laughed. Kid, go back to where you came from. Don't be so shameless. The gangster who slapped Guo Zhuan just now walked up to Lin Feng, seeming to want to get rid of this troublesome Lin Feng. The skinny Lin Feng didn't look at him directly, but spoke to himself. Who is in charge here? Is it you? The young man looked at the glamorous Ding Haiban inside and asked the question even though he knew the answer. It's not that Lin Feng wanted to show off, but he simply didn't take them seriously. In a year, they would all be wiped out. Ding Haiban originally didn't want to pay attention to the ant. He didn't expect that the ant had the courage to question the tiger. For a moment, he became a little curious and looked at the boy in front of him with interest. What? What's wrong with you? Although the tone was relatively gentle, the attitude revealed and it was clear at a glance. Ding Haiban thought he had seen countless people, of course many of them were women, but the young man in front of him who looked similar to him surprised him a little. Facing this group of people, he was still so dignified. There was even a kind of momentum that was suppressing them. She's my friend, so I'm going to take her away. Okay. Lin Feng didn't give him any face at all and raised his hand to pull Liu Wei out. Liu Wei's hand was suddenly held by a man, and she felt a little strange. This was the first time she had been held hand by a boy since she was a child, and in such an environment. I don't know what happened, but since Lin Feng held my hand, I no longer felt panicky. On the contrary, I felt an incomparable sense of peace. No wonder even his noble and elegant mother praised him highly. No, what was I thinking? It was just a handshake. Lin Feng had no idea that this simple action would cause so much thought in his wife's mind. Now he is thinking about how to solve this matter and whether. The hooligans around laughed when they heard this. Could this guy be an idiot? Want to snatch someone from young Master Ding? At this time, there was a noise outside. Were you who came over with a group of younger brothers? He was just trying to get those three people to talk, but he didn't have time to ask anything. A younger brother came to say that there was trouble outside and it seemed that some upper-class people were involved. I have never seen anyone who dares to cause trouble here in Blue Moon. Since he dares to cause trouble with the son of Mayor Ding, he must be from a powerful family. So were you who decided to come out and see for himself? Don't make a big deal out of it. It would be bad if it got to Sister Wen. Sister Wen couldn't find anyone to vent her anger on because of the assassination. What if he takes it out on me again? Wouldn't that be very uncomfortable? But as soon as he came over, he saw Lin Feng holding a beautiful girl and the son of Mayor Ding was standing next to them. As an old hand, Wu Yu who naturally knew what had happened. I suddenly felt a headache. If other brothers didn't know, how could he not know? This seemingly harmless boy actually defeated three vicious criminals. Looking at the miserable state of the three gangsters, Wu Yu who felt horrified, not to mention the plan he proposed later. He was still threatening them with the pregnant woman. Moreover, Lin Feng was Sister Wen's adopted brother. If he was hurt. On the other side is the son of Mayor Ding, who is usually arrogant and domineering. I don't know how many women he has played with. It's just that he has a good father, so he can still get away with it. Not only that, Mayor Ding is also one of the protective umbrellas of the society. If his son is touched. Seeing Wu Yu coming over, Ding Haiban's smile became even more intense. As the biggest lackey unders were Jin Gwen, he knew him. Ding Haiban had been coveting with Jin Gwen for a long time, but he never found the opportunity. Moreover, his father Ding Anshan always warned him not to mess with that woman. Only then did Ding Haiban suppress the anger in his heart. Although he was a playboy who was the son of an official, he was also a man of brains. Know who to offend and who not to offend. But he miscalculated this time. Brother Hu, the security here needs to be strengthened. We were just having fun, and this person suddenly broke in. It seems that he wanted to harm us. Ding Haiban smiled evilly, his eyes full of teasing, and sat down directly on the sofa, as if waiting for Wu Yu and others to drive Lin Feng away. Wu Yu cursed in his heart, this was his territory. a kid who hasn't even grown all his hair yet actually spoke to him in that tone. Doesn't brother who have any face? He is not a thug of the Ding family. Naturally, Li Bin didn't dare to say anything more now. He could only stand aside obediently and mourn for Lin Feng in his heart for 2 seconds. Liu Wei is regretting her decision so much now. If she had known earlier, she would not have come here. Now, she has implicated so many people. As if sensing something was wrong with his wife, Lin Feng patted her shoulder and turned to give Liu Wei a reassuring look. This action made Liu Wei blush immediately. She had never been in love and had never experienced such a thing. While the young heart was worried, a different emotion arose, which seemed a little sweet. I just wanted to take my friend away, that's all. Lin Feng responded to Wu Yuhu. He didn't want to make things difficult for Wu Yuhu, but he had another plan and didn't know how to implement it. Wu Yuhu smiled at Lin Feng and had a plan in mind. Isn't this the son of Mayor Ding? I had something to do just now and didn't know you were coming. After these words were spoken, basically everyone thought that Lin Feng was finished. The meaning of this statement is very clear. It is obvious that he wants to favor Ding Haibin's side. After all, that side has Mayor Ding. Liu Wei was stunned again. Looking at the young man next to her who was half a head taller than her, she felt a little ashamed because she had thought he was a lecher. He must have other intentions in getting close to me and my mother. Now it seems that who would dare to challenge the mayor's son for someone he has only known for 2 days and face so many gangsters alone? No, we can't implicate him. Thinking of this, Liu Wei stood on tiptoe and put her pink cherry lips close to Lin Feng's ear. Why don't you go first? There are so many people here, nothing will happen. Lin Feng, who was thinking about a plan, was stunned when he heard the words. My wife is still so cute. Thinking of this, Lin Feng lowered his head and said softly, it's okay, Sister Xiaowei, believe me. The boy's words seemed to have some magical power, making Liu Wei feel as refreshed as if bathed in a spring breeze, and more importantly, a peace of mind from the soul. At this moment, the figures of the 2 people seemed to overlap with the car accident in the previous life. In this life, we will never leave each other, and we will be together forever. Chapter 18. The plan begins. Liu Wei was stunned when she heard this. How could there be such a good boy? Knowing that there is a tiger ahead, he must stay and accompany me. When Ding Haibin heard Wu Yuhu's words, he half lay on the sofa and chuckled, oh, what mayor, deputy mayor. This sentence was obviously a mockery of Wu Yuhu and others. After all, just such a deputy mayor was able to suppress them and make them unable to move. Mr. Ding, you are joking, but we have our own rules here. This girl is definitely not here to accompany you drinking. Just now, Wu Yuhu has learned what happened from his younger brother. The pure and beautiful girl in front of me is definitely not a hostess. But he came to the bar today to work as a summer intern, so this is easy. Oh? She's not a hostess. If she's not a hostess, why would she come to the bar? Ding Haibin drank the beer beside him and then continued to speak arrogantly, with no restraint in his tone. The guys around him were also constantly catering to him, yeah, and all the people who come to the bar here to accompany the guests. That's right, you're so pretty, what's wrong with you having a drink with us? Li Bin is now regretting inviting this gentleman today. Isn't this just looking for trouble? This is the most powerful person in N City. The cold sweat on his forehead was pouring out uncontrollably and he had to hold on to the sofa to calm down. Hearing this, Wu Yuhu was not angry and still said with a smile. Mr. Ding, how about this? I'll pay for all the expenses today and then I'll call a few beautiful princesses for you. How do you think? To be honest, Wu Yuhu was already very respectful to the extent that he could do this. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been beaten and thrown out. Ding Haibin didn't say anything, his fingers still tapping on the crystal glass table in front of him, his eyes looking at Liu Wei unscrupulously. Liu Wei was so scared that she hid behind Lin Feng, avoiding the evil man's lustful gaze. Mr. Ding, this is boring. How about you tell me what to do? Wu Yuhu didn't care about Lin Feng's eyes, because the matter had developed to this point and it was no longer a matter of one person. Ding Haibin stopped moving his fingers and pointed at Liu Wei, I want her. He doesn't care about all those trivial things. From childhood to adulthood, as long as it's something he likes, he will never fail to get it. Isn't it just an ordinary society? If the dragon falls, just help another one stand up. You. Wu Yuhu clenched his only fist, veins popping out, but he quickly relaxed it. What's the matter? My father seems to be a little dissatisfied with some of your sister Wen's actions recently. After hearing this, Wei Yu completely gave up the idea of taking action because the evil young man in front of him had already spoken with his backstage. Although Maya Ding is not the type of person who throws tantrums like a child, he would be very upset if his own son was hurt. It might really be a fight to the death. Thinking of this, Wei Yu has decided to negotiate. At worst, I could send a few of my men to watch over her and let the girl have a drink and then leave. Who knew that just when he raised his head to discuss, he saw a scene that broke his heart. Lin Feng was standing nearby, holding a bottle of foreign liquor in his hand, probably a square bottle of whiskey, and was about to swing it at Ding Haiban's head. Don't. Stop. Bang. After a muffled sound, a scream came from the box. Ding Haiban didn't expect that someone would really dare to hit him. To be honest, most people wouldn't even dare to breathe after hearing that he was the mayor's son. Who dares to come up and beat him? Almost in an instant, a big gash appeared on Ding Haiban's head, and blood immediately flowed down his forehead. His consciousness began to blur and he tilted his head and passed out. In the second before he passed out, only one thought flashed through his mind, that is, he was doomed this time. The people around were so shocked by this scene that they were speechless for a long time. Wei Yu slapped his forehead and said, "It's over. It's all over now." Thinking of this, he quickly called a younger brother and asked him to inform Zhu Jingguan. Ding Haiban's younger brothers did not expect that this seemingly frail boy could be so brave. He just took the square bottle, and it was not an ordinary beer bottle, but a heavier whiskey, and smashed it directly on the head of the mayor's son. The surroundings were almost filled with the sound of people gasping for air, and some of the younger brothers even stood there in a daze. Guo Zhuan covered her face in shock. Is Liu Wei's friend so powerful? He dared to hit the mayor's son. Wu Jun now wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Compared to how useless he was just now, this man was truly a hero. He is indeed a character. Li Bin couldn't help but admire in his heart, as he had been contracting projects for so many years. I have never seen such a brave young man, but it's a pity that he is a bit brainless. He beat up the mayor's son. I'm afraid he will inevitably end up in jail. Liu Wei couldn't help but clench Lin Feng's hand again, her eyes full of worry. There were charming waves of light floating in those bright and moving eyes. At this moment, she seemed to understand why her noble and elegant mother praised the boy so much. Hurry up and save him. Call 120. When everyone was stunned, Wei Yu was the first to react. If something happened to Ding Haiban here, it would be a disaster. When the people around heard the sound, they started to panic, some making phone calls and some bandaging their wounds. And what about our Lin Feng? Holding the beautiful woman's hand, he calmly walked out from the crowd. I'm sorry, Brother Tiger. I was a little impulsive just now. Wei Yu felt a little confused. Was this a bit impulsive? This is almost enough to split a person's head apart. It is even more terrifying than those who often hang out with them. Especially the look just now, it was like a demon from hell. Wei Yu naturally couldn't say anything, so he could only say calmly. Hey, kid, go to the box first. The most important thing now is to ensure Lin Feng's personal safety. After all, he is the son of the mayor. Apart from anything else, at least the police will definitely come. If something goes wrong and he is taken to the police station, Lin Feng's life may be in danger. Lin Feng smiled, as if he didn't take what happened just now to heart. Instead, he said calmly, Brother Hu, can you send someone to take my friend home? Wei Yu was completely convinced when he heard this. It was already this late, and this guy was still thinking about picking up girls. Hearing this, Liu Wei raised her head and looked into Lin Feng's eyes. It's okay, go home first and don't let Aunt Ron worry. Lin Feng's tone was very gentle and his eyes were full of tenderness and doting. In this life, I will protect you all. Chapter 19 The Devil's Whisper. Although Wei Yu was unhappy now, he could only ask one of his younger brothers to drive Liu Wei home. Outside. Don't worry, I'm fine. Go home quickly and don't let Aunt Ron wait anxiously. Lin Feng opened the car window and said to Liu Wei in the car with a smile on his face. Well, wait a minute. Liu Wei knew that there was no point for her to stay here now, so she didn't force him to stay. Instead, he took out paper and pen from his backpack, wrote a few words, and then returned the note to Lin Feng through the car window. My number, call me when this is over. After saying that, he immediately added, I'll wait for you. Watching the black Mercedes-Benz car leave, Lin Feng smiled, tore the paper in his hand into pieces and then threw them into the air. The fragments were instantly blown into pieces by the wind and soon disappeared on the side of the street. Lin Feng had memorized that number long ago. Were you who was also confused? What have you been doing for so long? Aren't you just trying to pick up girls? I finally got the contact information, why did you tear it up again? Is he playing hard to get? Thank you, brother Hu. Let's go and meet Sister Zua. The boy didn't seem to hesitate too much, but strode straight forward to the bar's private room. Wu Yu who now found that he could no longer see the boy's true thoughts. Could it be that? He shook his head and followed the boy. The current situation did not allow him to have any wild thoughts. In the box, Zhu Jingwen sat on the sofa with an expressionless face. In fact, she had received the news just after Lin Feng had beaten Ding Haibin. The reason why she had not gone out was because she wanted to protect Lin Feng. If she had gone out just now, she would have to take action, otherwise it would be difficult to explain to her superiors. On the other hand, she wanted to hear Lin Feng's explanation in person, as this little boy of hers was not a reckless person. When Lin Feng walked into the box, Zhu Jingwen was sitting on the sofa and talking on the phone with a smile on her face and an apologetic tone in her voice. Hello, is this Secretary Wang? I'm Zhu Jingwen. Is Mayor Ding here? Oh. Okay. As soon as I hung up the phone, the next call came in. Opposite him is one of the four kings of the society, Wang Angua, a treacherous villain. Jingwen. What are you doing? Why did your people beat up the son of Mayor Ding? There was resentment in his tone, and I could feel the anger of the person on the other end even through the phone. Since it was on speakerphone, the sound quickly spread throughout Zhu Jingwen's private box. Lin Feng also sighed in his heart, walked behind Zhu Jingwen, and pinched her beautiful shoulders with both hands. Uncle Wang, I'm really sorry for being so ignorant. Are you okay? Zhu Jingwen, who was speaking, felt a young man appear behind her. The young man moved very gently, as if he was afraid of disturbing her. That feeling is like taking a bite of popsicle on a hot summer day. He's fine, just a little skin broken, but this is a very bad thing. Mayor Ding is very angry, you can handle it yourself. The call was hung up directly, and the person on the other end seemed very angry. Snap. Zhu Jingwen slammed the silver Ericsson heavily on the table. Her pretty face was dark, her chest was heaving with anger, and her nasal tone was very heavy. Noticing the guilty look on the boy's face and knowing that he was apologizing for his behavior, his anger almost subsided. Do you know how big a mess you've made this time? Zhu Jingwen turned around and sat down. She put her delicate and beautiful face in front of the boy, and her peach blossom eyes stared at his somewhat immature face. But to her disappointment, Lin Feng did not look panicked, but looked at her innocently. It seems that there is a playful look in his eyes, but it is hidden in the deepest part. Sister Zua, do you believe me? Lin Feng raised his handsome face, and his dark eyes seemed to be shining with light, which made Zhu Jingwen, a mature woman, dare not look directly at him. Do you believe in him? You know, the police almost came just now. If it weren't for my arrangements, and Ding Haibin's injuries were not very serious, just simple skin breaks. The reason why he fainted was because his physical condition was too weak. In just half an hour, I had already spent hundreds of thousands. Especially Ding Anshan, who gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and coupled with his previous cooperative relationship with him, this dissuaded him from taking action. Is it really worth it for me to do this for this young man? According to what she knew, he just stood up for a girl, and it could be said that he was just a hero saving a beautiful girl. But the scene of the young boy's thin body saving her with a brick on that rainy night suddenly appeared in front of Zhu Jingwen again. Certainly. Well, Sister Zua, let's go meet some old friends. Lin Feng did not explain anything, but grabbed Zhu Jingwen's hand and walked out of the box. In another private box. The light is horribly dark. Damn it, kill me if you dare. Xiao Ma Jie yelled frantically. He would never betray the person behind the scenes. Not only because of the loyalty of the underworld, but also because of his family's lives. Haha, how could I let you die? Wu Yu who laughed, don't you have any relatives? Don't force us. Xiao Ma sneered, ha ha ha, I sent all my family members abroad a long time ago, so there was no. Before Xiao Ma Jie could finish his words, a boy of about 17 or 18 suddenly appeared in front of him. It left him a little confused for a moment. What? You pick a random kid to threaten me? I don't even know him. Lin Feng smiled, and that smile made people feel scary, like an evil ghost from hell, which made people feel frightened. Uncle, why don't you recognize me? You wanted to kill me that day. The boy's voice was very soft, and if you didn't listen carefully you wouldn't be able to hear it at all. Xiao Ma Ji has killed so many people in his life that he really can't remember when he wanted to kill an unarmed child. Suddenly, Lin Feng slowly took out a mask from behind and put it on his face steadily. Hello. Hey. It's you, you bastard. Let me go, I'm going to kill you. It almost worked that night, and if it weren't for this jerk, he would probably be vacationing on a beach abroad right now. Long time no see, uncle. The Sun Wukong mask has slowly approached, and the fake hair on the face has become clearer and clearer. Haha, so you were with that bitch Wu Jingguan. Oh, why did I say she didn't have a man? It turns out she kept a gigolo like you. Brother Xiao Ma was no longer able to speak because Lin Feng had already punched him in the abdomen. He spat out a mouthful of sour water and was unable to speak for a long time. So, your family has moved abroad? Haha, don't worry, the other two have also been transferred abroad. You don't have a chance, ha ha ha. Xiao Ma continued laughing wildly, his face twitching from excitement. Besides, there will always be times when you are not here, right? She will die sooner or later, the people above will not let her live. Lin Feng frowned and looked up at Zhu Jingguan, who had an expressionless face beside him. Then he showed a weird smile. Sister Zhua, this person is useless. Zhu Jingguan didn't say anything, but turned around and waved her hand gently. In the next room. There is a huge one-way glass in the middle, and there is only one person in this room, the hunchback. That night, the man with the dagger could no longer bear it. So now among the three people, only this hunchbacked man is left. You heard everything. What do you think? Lin Feng took Zhu Jingguan's hand and slowly walked to the middle. The hunchback smiled expressionlessly. What can I feel? I've already said that we have no ties. Really? They really are free of all ties, are you? Lin Feng stood in front of the hunchback, tilted his head and asked seriously. What do you mean? The hunchback frowned, with murderous intent in his eyes. Hee, it's nothing, brother Hu, let the couple reunite. As soon as he finished speaking, were you who came over holding a pregnant woman? The woman had very fair skin and her appearance was not particularly outstanding, but at first glance you could tell that she was a good girl. Hui, why are you here? You bastards! Let her go. The hunchback was like a madman, rushing towards Lin Feng angrily. If he hadn't been tied up with chains, he would have really rushed over. Honey, I'm scared. The woman's face was full of fear, and the moment she saw the hunchback, she couldn't help but burst into tears. Lin Feng let go of Zhu Jingguan's hand and slowly stood in front of the hunchback. You didn't expect it, did you? I actually found your mistress. I heard that your original wife can't get pregnant. The boy's words echoed in the box like the devil's whisper. In the entire box, apart from the hunchback and the pregnant woman, there were only Lin Feng and Zhu Jingguan. The young man seemed to have regained his true self. Chapter 20, The Stratagem of Unraveling the Mystery. Seeing that the hunchback was still unmoved, Lin Feng slowly walked to the side of the pregnant woman. You have to know that I am a good person, but others may not be. After all, pregnant women are not for some people. Upon hearing this, Zhu Jingguan clenched the boy's hand, but her expression did not change much. She just watched the boy's performance quietly. Looking at the pain on his lover's face, the hunchback's expression gradually dimmed. I said, but you have to promise to let her and the child go. No problem. Lin Feng nodded, took out a cup of Coke from somewhere, inserted a blue straw, and started drinking. Just like the onlookers in later generations, their simple and honest appearance made the hunchback feel frightened. What kind of existence had this group of people offended? After the pregnant woman was taken out, the hunchback narrowed his eyes, as if he was reminiscing. Can I have a cigarette? Any kind will do. Lin Feng smiled and said, if you don't have cigarettes, how about Coke? Then he handed over the Coke in his hand. The hunchback tied to the chair looked at the Coke bottle in front of him and his mouth twitched involuntarily. This boy was simply a devil. It's actually very simple. I'm just an ordinary gangster. The three of us are the main characters, Xiao Ma Ji. Seeing that he didn't drink the Coke, Lin Feng took the bottle back, took Zhu Jingguan's hand and sat opposite her, listening quietly to what the hunchback said. Brother Xiao Ma found us and said there was an opportunity to make a fortune, that is to assassinate a woman. When the hunchback said this, he looked up at Zhu Jingguan. When I knew it was her, I was very scared. Noticing Zhu Jingguan's murderous look, a chill arose from the depths of his soul. When he said this, his body trembled involuntarily. Lin Feng naturally noticed the hunchback's little action and handed a bottle of Coke to Zhu Jingguan's mouth. Seeing Lin Feng's look, Zhu Jingguan was stunned for a moment. Then he opened his mouth towards the straw and applied gentle force. The cola in the bottle flowed upstream along the straw, and with a gulp, it was all drunk into his stomach. The boy seemed to be asserting his sovereignty and also seemed to be asking Zhu Jingguan to quit drinking. Finally, we went to meet the boss behind the scenes. He was a young man in his 20s wearing a pair of frog eye glasses. He told us to kill the man. Someone will take us abroad to hide from the limelight. Zhu Jingguan swallowed the coke in her mouth and asked coldly, "Who is that person?" "I don't know, but I heard someone call him Brother Le." After hearing this, Zhu Jingguan basically knew who was behind the scenes. As expected, it turned out to be him, her half-brother. "I was so kind to their family, why?" "Why?" Zhu Jingguan couldn't figure it out for a moment, holding her head with both hands as if she was unwilling to accept this reality. After the hunchback finished speaking, he slowly lowered his head and no longer looked directly into the boy's eyes. "I don't know if it's his illusion, but I always feel that this harmless boy can see what he really thinks." Lin Feng smiled but didn't say anything. Snap, snap, snap. The young man stood up and clapped his hands. "This is really a good show. You acted really well, didn't you?" Upon hearing this, the hunchback suddenly raised his head and stared at Lin Feng with his two bloodshot eyes. At this time, Zhu Jingguan also hugged her shoulders and slowly stood up, as if she wanted to hear what Lin Feng wanted to say. The hunchback's eyes dodged instantly. "I don't know what you are talking about, but I know this much." Lin Feng naturally ignored him and continued talking to himself. "Of course you know this much, because the person behind you only lets you say this much." Lin Feng directly and rudely broke the window paper, making the hunchback's face turn pale again. "What do you mean? You three shouldn't be of the same mind, right? Or are you a pawn of a big boss in the society?" Lin Feng's words were confusing and his thoughts were jumping around so much that the hunchback didn't know what to say in response for a moment. "So you still won't tell the truth?" Pregnant women are very afraid of being frightened. The hunchback closed his eyes tightly, trying not to think about the dirty scene, but the boy's words were like a spell, rushing around in his head and irritating his nerves. "Well, since you don't want to say it, I'll say it for you. You are indeed a hired killer, but you were not hired by Zwella." The hunchback, with his eyes tightly closed, began to tremble all over and his eyelids twitched involuntarily. At this time, Zhu Jingguan also opened her eyes wide, looking at the handsome profile of the boy, her beautiful eyebrows wrinkled together, and no one knew what she was thinking. Lin Feng continued to speak, gradually breaking down the hunchback's psychological defenses. "I think the reason you want to push the blame on Zwella is because the people behind you want them to fight each other." Then the two sides quarreled, and he took advantage of the situation behind the scenes. The hunchback coughed softly, knowing that he could not deceive anyone, and begged for mercy. "I'm sorry, I did lie to you. I'm actually Wang Angua's man." Zhu Jingguan's heart was already in turmoil when she heard this. It turned out that the uncles whom she had always respected on the surface actually wanted to kill her. "Wang Angua told me to say this and then let Zhu Jingguan and Zwilla fight each other so that he can take the opportunity to take over everything." Lin Feng didn't say anything, but continued to stare at him closely. "Really? Then why didn't you tell the truth before?" The hunchback was stunned for a moment, then continued. "I told you it was Wang Angua who told me to say this. He said it was okay." "Okay, you're still lying." Lin Feng waved his hand, turned around, and looked at Zhu Jingguan, who was somewhat confused. He was a little hesitant, not knowing whether he should tell her the truth. In his previous life, when he read the newspaper, it was indeed Wang Angua who hired the killer to kill someone, but there was also the shadow of Ding Anshan in it. That's right, it's Ding Anshan. He is the ultimate boss behind the scenes. If Lin Feng had not been reborn, he might have really been deceived by this hunchback. The hunchback was Ding Anshan's man from the very beginning, to the extent that the pregnant woman was also deliberately omitted. All we want is to make the hunchback's words convincing in case of failure, that's all. Thinking about it this way, Lin Feng felt that everything made sense, and the reports in the newspaper also became clear. Actually, I have another version here. Chapter 21 My Brother. The box suddenly became eerily quiet, and the hunchback seemed to be afraid to even breathe. "Let me tell you a story." The expression on Lin Feng's face was like he was coaxing a child to sleep, smiling, no different from the big brother next door. The manta stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. All animals always want to take advantage. But one day an eagle came and wanted to prey on the oriole. Having said that, Lin Feng deliberately paused and glanced at the hunchback's expression. The food chain always goes from one level down to the next, but if an eagle wants to eat a well-fed oriole, it's a bit difficult. Zhu Jingwen seemed to understand something. A pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with a strange light, and she was thinking about what Lin Feng said. So the oriole must not be able to eat enough, so the eagle decided to make the three animals fight each other in order to gain the greatest benefit. Lin Feng's voice was very slow, so slow that every word he said could be heard clearly. Suddenly, the voice raised its tone, so, Ding Anshan is the eagle behind this. Wu Yu, who was also nearby at this time, and he was completely confused by what he heard. But this voice was like a thunder that exploded in the minds of the other two people. Impossible, you can't possibly know. The hunchback was like a madman. Only he and Ding Anshan knew about this plan. No one else would know it. The other two people were indeed Zhuo and Wang Angua's men, there was no doubt about that, and on the surface he was indeed Wang Angua's man. But secretly he is Ding Anshan's secret younger brother. The reason why he is so loyal is not only because his family is controlled by Ding Anshan, but more because Ding Anshan is his benefactor. Once, the hunchback killed someone for robbery. If Ding Anshan hadn't saved him, he would have been sentenced to death. How do you know? I haven't told anyone. The hunchback's words have already acknowledged his purpose and everyone behind him. Don't worry, no one told me, because I guessed everything. The hunchback was now completely numb, because such a meticulous plan was actually seen through by a kid who hadn't even fully grown his hair. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. The hunchback was stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed out loud. Now I finally understand why the femme fatales Zhu Jingwen would be so fond of a young boy. It is true that heroes emerge from young people since ancient times. Mayor Ding's plan is likely to fail, but you are wrong about one thing. Oh? Haha, that means Mayor Ding is not at the top of the food chain, you are. Lin Feng was overwhelmed by this sudden flattery. How could he, a man of steel just now, be so? Okay, no matter what I promised you, I will not break my promise and I will let your lover go. Haha, it's so nice to talk to smart people. After the hunchback finished speaking, he closed his eyes and drooped his head again. Zhu Jingwen didn't know how she got back to the private box. When she came to her senses, she saw the boy took another bottle of Coke at some point, sat next to her, and drank it heartily. This boy really is an angel. This is the only thought in Zhu Jingwen's mind now, because since Lin Feng appeared, she has been saved from crisis after crisis by him and has seen through his mistakes. Did I save the galaxy in my previous life? God sent such a good angel to save me from the dire straits. How do you know that the hunchback was sent by Ding Anshan to stir the water? Hearing this, Lin Feng handed the Coke bottle in his hand to Zhu Jingwen. This time he was careful and there was still more than half a bottle of Coke left. But the shrewd Zhu Jingwen naturally saw through his trick and did not drink it, but held it in her palm. Of course I don't know. I'm not a god. Seeing Lin Feng's attitude, Zhu Jingwen's mouth shrank. Okay, tell me now. After saying that, he took a sip of Coke through the straw. Actually I don't know either, but Ding Anshan's attitude just now was very intriguing. According to common sense, I injured his son, and he just took the money and called it a day. Although I don't know how much money you gave him, Sister Zhuo, this matter is not something that can be solved with money. Zhu Jingwen gave her a reassuring look. Don't worry, that's just small change. Oh? Is that a small amount of money? Zhu Jingwen heard this, her charming peach blossom eyes narrowed instantly, her face turned a little colder. Who told you that? Didn't I stop them from saying it? Brother who called just now, I heard it. This tiger is really incapable of accomplishing anything. Hey, so this matter is not about money at all. As a mayor, do you think he can let me go if you give him a little money? Zhu Jingwen blinked, isn't it? Sister Zhuo, do you know what the stability of a triangle is? Zhu Jingwen looked unhappy when she heard this. Although she was the leader of the club, she had also been to college. TSK. Triangles are the most stable, I know that, don't underestimate it. She stopped talking halfway because she suddenly realized that the triangle was the most stable, so she didn't dare to act rashly. That's why Ding Anshan didn't attack her. It turned out that he wanted her to check and balance Zhuo and Wang Angua. Unless he died, otherwise. So my sister Zhuo, do you finally know? You mean Ding Anshan doesn't dare to touch me now, because once he provokes me, his plan will fail. Zhu Jingwen pushed the hair beside her ears to one side, her eyes slowly brightened. The reason why he wanted to kill me before was because he could directly use Wang Angua and Zhuo to take charge of the society. That's right. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Jingwen with an expression that showed he was a teachable child. Zhu Jingwen realized at this time that he was testing Ding Anshan just now, and the reason why he injured Ding Haiban's head was to Haha, you just saved the damsel in distress for me. Zhu Jingwen squinted her charming eyes, slightly pursed her lips, and spoke with her head tilted. Of course, you don't know, I have been in. Stop. Was that your girlfriend? She's quite cute. She said it in a slightly jealous tone. In fact, the main reason why Zhu Jingwen was angry just now was because Lin Feng, a girl, stood up for herself. Come with me. Blue Moon Bar. In the lobby. Apparently because of what happened just now, there were no other guests in the hall. Wu Yu, who sat at the top, with a group of his younger brothers standing below him. Although he is called a younger brother, he is actually still at the level of a big brother, just slightly lower than Wu Yu's level. But they were all central figures of Zhu Jingwen's direct line, and they all looked at each other with confusion. I don't know why Sister Wen called them here today. Lin Feng was pulled by Zhu Jingwen to the center of the stage. Looking at the crowd of people below, he felt a little confused. The younger brothers below were also confused and didn't know what Sister Wen wanted to do. Zheng Lin smiled and said, "What's wrong with this Sister Wen? Why did she drag a boy up there?" The people around him smiled and said, "I don't know, are they relatives?" Some people who are kind-hearted also said, "Could it be?" Zhu Jingwen changed into a black outfit. The black coat tightly wrapped her perfect body curves. The black stockings she wore just now also turned into black trousers. Her whole body exuded a solemn temperament. Let me introduce this to you all. This is my foster brother. Chapter 22, Drunk. The whole bar instantly became lively with Zhu Jingwen's voice. The gangsters of high or low status in the audience looked at Lin Feng with different eyes, revealing envy, jealousy, suspicion, and other expressions. Some people also quietly left or picked up their phones and started sending messages. Soon, the audience started to make a noise. What a handsome boy, do you have a friend? Do you want me to introduce you to one? The friends here are naturally girlfriends. Hey, our Sister Wen knows everything, why should we worry about it? Sister Wen's brother is our brother, don't you think? Right. Lin Feng stood in the center. Logically speaking, this kind of occasion would be overwhelming for an adult. However, as Lin Feng, who had managed the company's grand annual meeting, he would naturally not be frightened by such a scene. What a joke. If a company CEO is frightened by a group of thugs, he would have lived a dog's life for the next few decades. But what Lin Feng didn't expect was that Zhu Jingwen actually pulled him out and introduced her identity to everyone openly. You know, after today's incident, Lin Feng can now rely on this identity to walk around N City with his head held high. As the younger brother of the boss of the largest community, one can imagine the value of this. Hello everyone, my name is Lin Feng. I'm very happy to be friends with you all. Let's work hard together. Lin Feng was cautious. He didn't want to get involved in gangs, so he would definitely put them on the right track in the future. His story had already spread widely in the bar. After all, the ambulance took away the mayor's son. Almost everyone is aware of Ding Haiban's notoriety. Anyone who can cut a hole in his forehead must be a big shot. Zheng Lin shouted from the audience, "Brother Feng is so handsome. You did a great job just now." Zheng Lin used to be a street vendor, but with the help of the community, he has managed to get to where he is today. It can be said that he is Zhu Jingwen's most loyal descendant, the one that no one else recognizes. Just now, what just now? Old Zheng, please explain clearly. After a discussion among a few people, they realized that the handsome young man on the stage was the hero who had knocked Ding Haiban unconscious just now. You are indeed a heroic boy. Our club has a bright future. Sister Wen, you have such a handsome brother this time, shouldn't you express your gratitude? A young man dressed in a shabby manner, with his hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to take advantage of the situation. Zhu Jingwen chuckled, all right, today, including the nightclub, unlimited drinks, all free. Okay, wow. Great, Brother Lin Feng, you are simply our god. Let's toast to Brother Lin Feng. Around 6 p.m. The entrance of the number 6 middle school family courtyard. A black Mercedes-Benz car approached slowly and stopped very slowly, as if it was a little reluctant, but it finally stopped. Lin Feng originally wanted to go to work today, but Zhu Jingwen called Fatty Wang directly and asked for a day off for Lin Feng. When the phone call came, Fatty Wang was shocked and thought something had happened to Lin Feng. How is it? Brother, is it very different from what you imagined? Zhu Jingwen rolled down the car window and gusts of evening breeze blew in through the window, floating her black hair, and a charming scent filled the entire car. Upon hearing this, Lin Feng, who was in the passenger seat, knew that Zhu Jingwen was still blaming him for concealing his identity. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said something that has become very common in later generations. The Jianhu is not just about fighting and killing, it is more about the human relationships and ways of the world. At first, Zhu Jingwen was afraid that Lin Feng would not be able to adapt, but after hearing these words, she realized that her worries were unnecessary. How could this mature and experienced boy not adapt? Take the fact that he was able to handle himself so well among so many veterans today. We can't use common sense to describe him. By the way, what am I in the story you told today, a praying mantis? Zhu Jingwen half held the steering wheel and looked at Lin Feng with a smile on her face, but the smile on her face looked more and more strange, and it didn't seem like a good sign at all. Oh, it's already past 6 o'clock. I need to go home. If I don't go home, my butt will be in trouble. The boy had a terrified expression on his face, as if coming home late was a terrible thing. He unbuckled his seat belt skillfully and opened the car door. The whole action was incredibly fast. But a second after getting off the car, the boy turned around again and tapped the glass gently. When the glass fell, he said, "Sister Zua, there is one more thing. Thank you for what you did today." After saying that, the boy turned around and ran away as if he was confessing his love to his beloved girl. With a poochie sound, Zhu Jingwen, who was holding the steering wheel, could no longer hold back her laughter. She knew what Lin Feng was talking about. She recognized him as her younger brother, which she could have kept secret, but she still said it in order to protect his safety. Although it may cause unnecessary trouble, it also has a certain deterrent effect on people like Ding Haibin. We are like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, but what is he? Ha ha, an old fox covered with hair. Oh no. It's a little fox. Lin Feng walked towards home without caring about his relatives. He originally didn't want to drink today, but those people kept toasting him, so he had no choice but to drink a few glasses. But after I started drinking, I felt more and more energetic. You know, Lin Feng in his previous life was also a master of drinking. After all, as a senior executive of the company, drinking can no longer be considered a hobby. It can be said to be a necessary skill. Countless projects are the result of drinking. To put it bluntly, as long as you make the client drunk, you can easily handle any project. Oh, who is it? Xiao Feng. Just when turning a corner, Lin Feng accidentally bumped into a woman's shoulder. When he looked closely, he found that it was Aunt Man. Ji Yushiman had something to do at school today. Since the college students had finished their final exams, she had to go to school to grade the papers. As soon as she arrived at the community, she was bumped into by a drunk man. Just when I was about to get angry, I saw that the person was Lin Feng. Xiao Feng. How come you drank so much? How did you learn to drink? Without having time to think, Ji Yushiman pulled up Lin Feng's arm and lifted up his whole body, thus stabilizing him. Lin Feng was also drunk at this time and said arrogantly, "Just leave me alone, okay? I'm not drunk." After saying that, he wanted to push Ji Yushiman away and prepare to go home. Okay, you're not drunk, I won't care about you, you're going to go home like this. I'll beat you to death if I see you. Lin Feng came to his senses then. Although he had finished the college entrance examination, his parents were very strict and he would be very worried if his mother saw him drunk. Even if you don't die, you'll lose a layer of skin. Chapter 23 Not Going Home. Ji Yushiman's family is not as old-fashioned as Lin Feng's. As a university professor, she is naturally more open-minded. Many things in the house are new to the new century. Especially in her room, there is no fancy decoration, but more of a simple beauty. There was a wooden desk on one side with an open book on it, and next to it was a desk lamp. A medium-sized wooden cabinet was placed in the middle, filled with various books. From this we can see that the owner of the room is a person who loves reading very much. Xiao Feng, slow down, I'll go get you some water. Ji Yushiman put the slightly drunk Lin Feng on the bed and looked at the boy with a blushing face helplessly. But it was more of a look of concern. Lin Feng only felt his mouth dry and his throat seemed to be blocked by something, making him want to reach in and dig it out. Anyone who has ever drunk alcohol knows that this is an after effect of drinking. Looking at the somewhat familiar environment around him, Lin Feng slowly sat up, as if he was at Aunt Man's house, and patted his head. This was the first time I got so drunk since my rebirth, but it was worth it as I had solved a difficult problem for Zhu Jingguan. Just when Lin Feng was confused, he suddenly felt like vomiting, but couldn't. Finally, after a period of nausea, Lin Feng couldn't bear it anymore and rushed out immediately. "Auntie Man, get out of the way, I need to go to the bathroom." "Xiao Feng, what are you doing?" Ji Yushiman poured a glass of water, and just as she returned to the door, she saw Lin Feng looking miserable, as if he wanted to vomit. Although Lin Feng is drunk now, he still has at least some consciousness. In the bathroom, Ji Yushiman patted the boy on the back. "Why did you drink so much? You are still young, what's wrong? Talk to your aunt." "Water, I want to drink water." Seeing this, Ji Yushiman hurriedly came over with a cup of water. "Here's the water. Why did you drink so much? If I find out, your butt will burst again." As he spoke, he calmly collected the clothes hanging nearby. After Lin Feng drank several big gulps of water, he finally felt a little better, and the feeling of nausea gradually disappeared. "What's wrong? Why did you drink so much?" Ji Yushiman thought she knew this junior very well, but recently she couldn't see through him. He was a boy who blushed when talking to me before, but last time he even said he wanted to marry me. He said it so openly, as if he had to marry her anyway. This time it's even more outrageous. The good boy who usually doesn't drink is now completely drunk. Lin Feng had been used to pretending to be deep in front of Zhu Jingguan recently, so he said directly, "Don't meddle in men's affairs." After saying that, he laid directly on Ji Yushiman's shoulder, squinting his eyes, not knowing what he was thinking about. In fact, he was a little scared. After all, he did go a little too far. When Ji Yushiman heard this, there was a hint of anger on her face, but it soon disappeared, replaced by a gentle smile. Okay, I don't care, but you still have to call your elder sister, right? Here." A small Nokia mobile phone was handed to Lin Feng's face. Lin Feng slowly raised his head from the woman's shoulder and said, "Please dial the number for me." Ji Yushiman dialed the number with a somewhat amused look and put the phone to Lin Feng's ear. The call was connected soon, and my mother's voice came from the other end. "Hello. Mom, I'm at Aunt Man's house. There's a football game today, and I want to watch it at Aunt Man's house. Then look at the computer and learn some college knowledge in advance." Since the TV at Lin Feng's home is very old and the old-fashioned antenna can only receive a few channels, Lin Feng often watches TV at Ji Yushiman's house. Wang Feng on the other end of the phone began to mutter, "Why did you go to your Aunt Man's house again? You only caused trouble for her. Come back soon. It will be the same if you watch the replay tomorrow." Ji Yushiman picked up the phone at this time. "Sister, if Xiafeng wants to watch TV, let him stay here. I can also talk to him about college." "Oh, this kid is causing you trouble again. They are our own children, why bother?" When the phone beeped, Lin Feng let out a long breath, a stream of hot air in the air, allowing Ji Yushiman to slowly stand up. "Okay, go to sleep and I'll read a book for a while." After saying that, she no longer paid attention to Lin Feng. She walked out of the room alone, holding her pajamas. When she walked out of the room, she put her hands behind her back and closed the door gently. After a while, he turned back again. Lin Feng noticed the sound, so he lay down on the bed, put the pillow next to himself, squinted his eyes and looked over quietly. The black professional suit she was wearing was taken off, and the body was covered with a white pajamas with cartoon characters on it. The cartoon pajamas do not destroy the mature beauty. On the contrary, the contrast gives her a unique charm. Ji Yushiman slowly walked to the desk, picked up a book on the table and started reading, occasionally glancing at the boy on the bed. But suddenly he found that Lin Feng, who should have been fast asleep, was looking at him with his two eyes. There was no man's desire in his eyes, but only the confusion of a young man. "Why aren't you sleeping yet? If you don't, I'll spank you." Aunt Man's doting voice highlighted her gentleness, and the pretentious movements of her hands seemed somewhat cute. "Aunt Man, you are so kind to me." The boy's sudden words made Ji Yushiman's mature and gentle face blush a little. She smiled and rolled her eyes at him. "I am your aunt. If I don't treat you well, who else can I treat well? Auntie is so good to you, can you tell me why you drank so much today?" "Have no idea." Ji Yushiman was not annoyed when she heard this. She smiled with her hands covering her mouth, then patted the blue summer quilt that she often covered herself with and put it on Lin Feng's belly. "If you don't know, then you don't know. Then go to sleep." It was only around 8 o'clock in the evening. Although Lin Feng had drunk some wine, he was not very sleepy. Lying on the bed, covered with the quilt that Aunt Man often covered herself with, a smell hit him in the face. Under the dual stimulation of alcohol and fragrance, Lin Feng's body felt a little tired. He tilted his head and looked sideways at Aunt Man. She was so intellectual and elegant and had such gentleness engraved in her bones. She was truly virtuous. I really never had a detailed chat with Aunt Man in my previous life. So much so that I didn't even pay attention to the people around me. But looking at Ji Yushiman's beautiful face and mature and elegant figure, it can be said that she exudes beauty and elegance from head to toe. I don't know if that bastard will get a bargain in the future. Seeing Aunt Man looking a little sleepy, Lin Feng swallowed his saliva and whispered pitifully, "Aunt Man, aren't you going to sleep yet?" Ji Yushiman put down the book in her hand and said, "It's okay, I'll read it for a while. I'll go to bed after the climax of this story. You go to bed first. Don't worry about me." Lin Feng said, "Oh," and closed his eyes again. Then not long after, he opened his eyes again. "Go to bed early, I mean don't stay up late, that's not right, forget it, I'm going to bed first." "It's only 8 o'clock in the evening, why are you staying up late?" Ji Yushiman ignored Lin Feng. She just paused for a moment while turning the page, but then quickly turned the page again. However, Lin Feng saw that Aunt Man seemed to frown and glanced over here out of the corner of her eye. The strangeness in her eyes was self-evident. It was obvious that his attack had ended in failure again. I didn't think about it anymore, turned over and went to sleep. Ji Yushiman looked at the boy sleeping soundly on the bed, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, recalling the boy's words before about marrying her, and gently shook her head. No one noticed that there was something indescribable in the woman's eyes. After a while, the woman felt a little sleepy, so she pulled the quilt for the boy, and then went to sleep in the guest room alone. Chapter 24: Pure Friendship. Morning. The shop assistants of the small supermarket have not arrived yet. They are all gathered together in scattered groups, talking in low voices and discussing their personal trivial matters. Lin Feng leaned against the cashier counter, thinking about what happened last night. The clothes hanging out to dry, the coquettishness on Aunt Man's shoulders, and all kinds of unreasonable troubles. Even when he uttered the arrogant words at the end, Lin Feng recalled what happened last night bit by bit in his mind. The more he recalled, the more he wanted to slap himself. What kind of thing is this? It's just that Aunt Man is virtuous and gentle and doesn't care about me. If it was someone else, they would have slapped themselves in the face a long time ago. When Lin Feng got up this morning, he could no longer see Aunt Man. After looking at the food and the note on the dining table, he realized that Ji Yushiman had gone to school to grade papers early in the morning. Thinking of this, Lin Feng slapped his head hard again. I secretly made up my mind to drink less alcohol in the future. After all, after drinking, I don't know anything. Hey Xiaofeng, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable? A soft voice sounded beside Lin Feng, with a hint of concern in the tone. And Yinrong saw Lin Feng in a daze early in the morning, scratching his ears and cheeks from time to time, which made people laugh. When I got home last night, my daughter, who had never been interested in boys, actually asked about him in a roundabout way. In addition, he had saved her before when unloading goods, so Yinrong now found Lin Feng more and more interesting the more she looked at him, like a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. But when he thought of the 500,000 yuan debt that his family owed, he felt a little melancholy. Do I really want to sell the house? But if the house is sold, where will my daughter and I live? Or should she commit herself to her late husband's boss, Li Yang? Li Yang has approached me many times. As long as I become his lover, all problems will be gone. And Yinrong slapped him in the face. What the hell? He looked not even 1,000th as good as her husband. Thinking of this, and Yinrong looked at Lin Feng in front of her again. He was not even 1/10 as good as this young man. Unconsciously, and Yinrong's melancholy was reduced a little. At this moment, Lin Feng in front of him suddenly slapped himself on the head twice, which made Yinrong very worried, and she quickly expressed her concern. It's okay, Aunt Rong. I went to bed late last night and I'm a little sleepy. After hearing the boy's answer, the woman felt relieved. And Yinrong suddenly found that she seemed to be paying too much attention to this young man, probably because he saved her last time. Her mood, which had just calmed down, became irritable again, making her feel upset. I simply stopped thinking about it and walked directly to the shelves at the back to start today's work. Lin Feng looked at Aunt Rong, who seemed a little strange. Although he was a little confused, before he had time to think about anything, a customer came to pay the bill. Well, no matter how sophisticated, steady, and talented he is just a cashier now. Morning. Lin Feng stood alone at the cashier counter at the door and began to think about his next plan. Prices were not too high at the beginning of the new century. At that time, the monthly salary of an ordinary junior high school teacher was only 600 or 700 yuan, not to mention other things. The monthly salary of my small supermarket is only a few hundred yuan. It's like working like a beast of burden. Things should be done one step at a time and food should be eaten one mouthful at a time. Just when Lin Feng was thinking about the important things in his life, a few boys and girls suddenly rushed in from the door and shouted as soon as they entered. "You lunatic, you are working as a laborer here. Be careful or I will report you for child labor." Lin Feng was slightly stunned. In front of him was a boy with very long hair, but very neat, just like Jackie Chan's short hair. "Weizi, why are you here?" Chen Wei, Lin Feng's high school classmate, is the kind of good brother with whom he can talk about anything. He also got admitted to an university, but his family is relatively wealthy, so he would never come to work as a summer intern. "Madman, I'm not the only one here, look who this is." A sweet-looking girl walked in. Her face was so white and tender that it was scary because it looked like it had been soaked in milk. There was not a single flaw on the girl's face, and her facial features were extremely delicate, making her look like a doll. Lin Feng naturally recognized who she was at a glance. She was also a high school classmate. Her name was Cai Yuyang. Although she was a girl, she and Chen Wei and Lin Feng were so close that they were like one. However, they had some conflicts in college, and Cai Yuyang was so angry that she flew abroad before graduation. "Hey, isn't it just 10 days since we last met? Could I have forgotten our sister Yang? Xiaofengzi, don't work here anymore. Come to my pharmaceutical company and I'll find you a job. I guarantee you'll get $1,000 a month." Although Cai Yuyang looks pure and beautiful, she has a very straightforward personality. She is the kind of person who is very honest and straightforward. Her family runs a pharmaceutical company. As Cai Yuyang spoke, he placed his hand on Lin Feng's shoulder, acting like a good friend. Lin Feng was used to it. If it weren't for the conflict in college, he and she might have become good friends. But since I already had a wife in my previous life, naturally. "Haha, lunatic, just listen to Sister Yuyang, otherwise someone will be heartbroken." Chen Wei was watching the fun from the side and talking without thinking about the trouble. Lin Feng smiled and asked, "Why don't you see Li Shen?" Li Shen, Chen Wei's secret crush, is also a member of Lin Feng's circle. The four of us were together in high school and our classmates often called it pure friendship. "I'm here. Wei Zi is so disgusting. He just spit gum on my foot." A girl wearing black-framed glasses walked in. Although she was not too stunning, she had the air of a literary young woman. Lin Feng naturally knew that the four of them all went to an university, but later Cai Yuyang went abroad, and one of the four became Liu Wei. Chen Wei and Li Shen got married right after graduation. They were the kind of couple who got married because they were pregnant. As a result, Lin Feng was a step late that year and could only serve as his best man. But Cai Yuyang never came back until Lin Feng was reborn, which shows how deeply Lin Feng hurt her. The few of them hadn't seen each other for more than 10 days since the college entrance examination, so naturally they had a pleasant conversation. "Xiaofengzi, I'll take the lion's share, so the money will be deducted from your salary." Cai Yuyang unceremoniously took out the big head ice cream from the refrigerator covered with a quilt, unwrapped it and put it into her cherry mouth. "We also want." Chen Wei took out two without hesitation, one big head and one old popsicle. Then he handed the old popsicle to Li Shen. "Eat it quickly, this madman is treating you." Lin Feng said with a look of confusion, "You big landlords, can you please stop exploiting a poor peasant like me?" To be honest, Lin Feng is the poorest among the four. After all, my father Lin Yuanting was a teacher, and it was the beginning of the new century, so how high could his salary be? Cai Yuyang looked at the helpless look on the boy in front of her, her innocent face full of smiles, as if it was very funny that Lin Feng was humiliated. "By the way, what majors did you apply for?" Lin Feng asked with a smile. Lin Feng naturally knew what everyone had reported, and now he wanted to change the topic to the one about the advance payment of his own salary. Otherwise, at this rate, several people would dare to empty out the supermarket. Chen Wei looked at Li Shen lovingly. Li Shen applied for the major of mathematics, so I followed her. Li Shen, who was eating an old popsicle, curled her lips and said, "Counting is very difficult. You can't learn it in 3 minutes." "Oh, I can't learn it, but I still have you. Can you teach me?" Chen Wei said shamelessly. Lin Feng knew that Li Shen would be a math teacher at No. 1 middle school in N City in the future, and what about Chen Wei? A rich second generation who inherited the family business. By the way, crazy, aren't you going to apply for Chinese language and literature? Is that right? Lin Feng nodded. Okay, you are so good at Chinese, you will definitely be a writer in the future. By the way, Sister Yang, you didn't apply for Chinese language and literature, did you? Sai Yang, who was licking the big-headed ice cream, blushed, glanced at Lin Feng and said slowly. I don't really understand either. I just learn whatever Lin Feng learns. It's a good opportunity to supervise this kid and prevent him from becoming a bad person when he goes to college. The meaning of the words was already very clear, and all that was missing was to say directly to Lin Feng, I'm interested in you. Oh tilde Sister Yang is Sister Yang. Chen Wei started to make a scene nearby. Li Shan was a smart person and kicked him on the calf. Oh what? You can't even keep your mouth full after eating an ice cream. The former rubbed his calf with a grimace, too aggrieved to speak. Lin Feng only found out about his previous life after he graduated. Sai Yang not only applied for the same major as himself, but also later used his connections to transfer the two of them to the same class. Looking at the bright and charming girl in front of him, Lin Feng was confused again. He didn't know how to face this relationship. Maybe God gave him another life to make up for his regrets. Chapter 25 Confidentiality. Most Chinese men have a first love complex and always regard young and unavailable girls as their white moonlight. So much so that the grown-up Bai Yueguang stood in front of him. He still likes the girl who went to school with him, copied homework with him, and was punished by the teacher with him. It's just that Lin Feng didn't have that. It can't be said that he didn't have that. He naturally liked Sai Yang in his heart, but he was just an ordinary person in his previous life. Sai Yuan's family has been in business for generations and they even have pharmaceutical companies all over Province H. Besides, in his previous life, Lin Feng already had Liu Wei, so naturally he didn't want to delay Sai Yang. It was impossible for him to be a scumbag. At least, in his previous life at university, Lin Feng would not have done such a thing. Although I regretted it after entering society, I only thought about it before going to bed at night. If you really ask him to do something, he either doesn't dare or doesn't have the ability to do it. But this life is different. In this life, I have memories that are decades ahead of others. No. I need to build my career first, then start a family. I can't think about this all day long. What Lin Feng didn't know was that when he had this idea, he already had the potential to become a scumbag. Dusk. Sai Yang and his friends stayed in the supermarket until the afternoon. Before leaving, they tempted Lin Feng with a high salary, wanting him to work in his family's pharmaceutical company. Lin Feng directly and righteously refused, meaning that he would not make money from his own people. There seemed to be something wrong with this sentence, which made the former blush. After looking at the time, Lin Feng decided to leave. And Yinrong didn't have work in the afternoon, so she went home after get off work in the morning. After talking to Fatty Wang who was inspecting nearby, Lin Feng pushed open the glass door of the supermarket and prepared to go somewhere. And Yinrong always felt that her daughter was a little strange today, but she couldn't tell what was strange. He always seems to be absent-minded and gets distracted from time to time, which makes people a little worried. Liu Wei glanced at the clock on the dining table, rubbed the corner of her clothes with her tender white hands and then gently bit her teeth. Mom, I feel a little dizzy from reading. Let's go downstairs to get some fresh air. And Yinrong, who was cooking, waved her hand without a second thought and said, come back early, the meal will be ready soon. And Yinrong is very relieved about her daughter Liu Wei. From childhood to adulthood, she has always been the kind of girl that makes her worry-free. But what she didn't know was that it was her daughter who made her worry so much. But now I have to sneak downstairs to meet a young man. Ever since what happened yesterday, Liu Wei has been feeling uneasy. She has been paying attention to her phone and is worried about the boy. This was the first time I lied to my mother, and it was just to meet a boy. Today, Liu Wei couldn't help herself and sent a text message to Lin Feng, here. Before she could say anything, the man asked her to meet him downstairs of her house in the evening. Standing next to a piece of fitness equipment at the entrance of the community, he looked around, as if looking for something. Lin Feng naturally arrived very early. Liu Wei's home was also where the two of them lived in their previous life. To be honest, Lin Feng knew how to get there with his eyes closed. Sister Xiaowei, sorry for the long wait. I got off work late today. Hearing the voice behind her, Liu Wei turned around quickly. Because she was in a hurry, Liu Wei only wore a pair of white socks, black slippers, and a white long skirt, which was very attractive. Compared to her mother and Yanrong's maturity, Liu Wei is much more immature. If an Yanrong can be compared to a ripe pomegranate, bright red and attractive, then Liu Wei is a green apple, sweet and lovely. Are you okay? During this period of time, Liu Wei had already gone over various situations in her mind. What torture to extract confessions. Looking at the boy in front of him who was intact and had a slight smile on his face. The stone in Liu Wei's heart finally fell to the ground. Oh, what could possibly happen to me? That's nothing, just a small matter. Lin Feng waved his hand nonchalantly, looking like a good guy, which made Liu Wei laugh out loud. I have never met such an interesting boy in my life. It's not that Liu Wei has never seen outstanding boys. Especially in school, there are quite a few who have a crush on Liu Wei, but most of those boys are boring. The purpose of getting close to her is to flatter her before she even says a few words. Sister Xiaowei, isn't Aunt wrong at home? Lin Feng looked at his wife like this. As the person who shared the bed with her, he certainly knew what Liu Wei was thinking. This is how I attracted her in my previous life. Women are curious no matter what age. Oh, well, she was at home cooking, and I came down alone. Liu Wei seemed to want to explain, but halfway through, she realized something was wrong. Did they really not make things difficult for you? Liu Wei still had some disbelief on her face, because that man seemed to be the mayor's son. With a shrewdness, she could see that this matter would not be resolved so easily. It's okay, Sister Xiaowei, are you short of money? Lin Feng waved his hand again, and then stated the purpose of his visit tonight. Because at this time in her previous life, Liu Wei did not go out to work, although she knew about the family's debt problem at that time. No, Of course Liu Wei would not say that she went to work because she was stimulated by Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled, looking friendly. Sister Xiaowei, do you believe me? The boy's body moved closer, and Liu Wei could already smell the unique male scent on him. It's a smell of hormones. Aunt Rong is very kind to me. If there is anything, you can tell me. Liu Wei blinked her crystal clear eyes, then gently pursed her pink lips and lowered her delicate white hands from behind her back. Psychologically, this indicates that one's defenses have been let down. Actually, my family isn't that rich. There were not many people at the small gate, there was only the silence of the night and the chirping of crickets in the green belt next to it. Liu Wei slowly sat down on the fitness equipment next to her. Her pure and lovely face looked like a cute kitten, making people like her. In fact, I know that my family owes a lot of money, and my mother has been working hard to pay it back. Since Dad passed away, Mom rarely smiles, and the only time she smiles is when I get good grades. Lin Feng didn't say anything, he knew that this girl had endured too much. In her previous life, she first lost her father and then her mother. In the end, if the police had not intervened, Li Yang would have even extended his evil hands to her. In her previous life, Li Yang wanted to force an Yanrong to be his lover, but an Yanrong refused to obey and finally jumped off the building. The Public Security Bureau of City N attached great importance to this matter and naturally found out the truth in the end. The truth of his father's corruption case was also found out. It was Li Yang who coveted the beauty of someone else's wife, so he framed. Lin Feng naturally followed Liu Wei's words and continued. Well, I think Aunt Rong has a good temperament, she doesn't look like someone who works in a supermarket. Chapter 26 Commitment. Dusk had already fallen and night was quietly approaching, but there was still some light, and the sun was still shining below the horizon. The ground was slightly illuminated by the light, but most of the light came from the moon. Listening to the boy praising his mother, Liu Wei felt a little unhappy for some reason, thinking to herself, of course my mother is a fairy-like figure, you don't need to tell me. But I always feel that it is not because of this. I have been thinking about it for a long time but still can't figure it out. So you want to pay off the family debt? Help Aunt Rong reduce her burden. Lin Feng didn't know if it was because of him that his wife appeared in the bar, because in her previous life, Liu Wei did not have the help of the Blue Moon Bar. Instead, he worked as a waiter in a restaurant, and history seemed to have gone astray. Liu Wei originally planned to work as a waitress in a restaurant, but because the salary there was not even half of that in a bar, she decisively chose the latter. Under normal circumstances, she might consider safety issues. However, because he was stimulated by his mother's praise of Lin Feng, he chose the bar without thinking, which led to what happened yesterday. In the end, it was Lin Feng, whom he looked down upon, who saved him. It can't be said that he looked down on her, but he just felt uncomfortable with his mother praising him. In a way, she must be jealous. Thinking of this, Liu Wei couldn't help but blush. Her slightly chubby face looked even more pure and lovely. A breeze suddenly blew, ruffling the girl's hair. In the dim shadows, she and the handsome boy in front of her formed a beautiful picture. Sister Xiaowei, don't worry too much about this matter. There will always be a way out when the car reaches the mountain. Liu Wei was just about to say that if it's not your family, you definitely won't worry. Lin Feng's next words moved her heart and touched her. Aunt Rong is very good to me. If it doesn't work out, I know a lot of people. I can just lend her some money and help her pay it back. Although Liu Wei didn't know how much money her family owed, it must not be a small amount. The young man in front of him didn't care and said directly that he would help his family pay it back. Regardless of whether he really did this, his attitude alone is far superior to his peers. He and my mother were at most colleagues, and it was a temporary one. I heard that he and I went to the same university, and it seemed that we were in the same major. Thank you, but... But what? Aunt Rong treats me like her own aunt. Her business is my business. These are all trivial matters. Before Liu Wei could refuse, Lin Feng took over the conversation and refused to give Liu Wei any chance to speak. Also, you must never work in a bar again. That's not a place for girls, understand? There was a tone of command in the boy's voice, but Liu Wei had no complaints at all, and it could be said that she could not feel any resentment. Especially a girl as beautiful as Sister Xiaowei. It's a good thing I met her this time. Well, I won't do that next time. The more Liu Wei listened, the sweeter it felt in her heart. It was like the taste of honey. No, it was sweeter than honey. Even though I didn't eat any sugar, I couldn't stop feeling the sweetness in my mouth. She had to swallow several mouthfuls of saliva before she felt much better. What she didn't know was that the feeling she just had was biologically known as a flood of hormones, or simply put, the feeling of being heart-pounding. Oh, well, it's getting late, you should hurry up, or Aunt Rong will get impatient waiting. As soon as she finished speaking, the cell phone in Liu Wei's hand rang. The sudden noise startled Liu Wei and she almost dropped her phone. I glanced at my cell phone and saw it was my mother calling. I must have been downstairs for too long and the meal must have been ready a long time ago. Liu Wei looked up at Lin Feng, frowned slightly and made a hush gesture with a finger on her lips. Then, after making sure that Lin Feng would not speak again, she carefully picked up the phone. Hello, Mom, I'll be home soon. I've been hanging around downstairs for a while. The guilty look on his face made Lin Feng laugh uncontrollably. She thought that if this was a video call in the future, she would be exposed in the current state she was in. Yeah, I'm just about to go up the stairs. I'll be there soon. Yeah, okay. Liu Wei hung up the phone, looked again, and after confirming that she had hung up, she whispered. Thank you for what happened yesterday. Also, can you please not tell my mom about this? There was a hint of pleading in Liu Wei's eyes, which made people feel pity for her. No problem, but you have to promise me one thing. What's up? That is, don't go to such a mixed place in the future. Liu Wei nodded, then said nothing, turned her back, her long skirt swaying with the movement, the air filled with the girl's fragrance. It was not until I reached the gate of the community that I stopped. Be careful on your way back and keep an eye on the road. Okay, Sister Xiaowei. Lin Feng's voice was so loud that the passers-by looked at him as if he were an idiot, but this also made the girl feel embarrassed. Liu Wei didn't even turn her head and ran into the community like the wind. But what neither of them knew was that right now, upstairs in the community, there was a woman in an apron, looking down through the glass with a frown on her face. Lin Feng returned home dancing and humming a song. As soon as he opened the door, he saw his uncle Wang Kun sitting on the sofa. Hey uncle, what brings you here today? Wang Kun smiled and said, Why, Xiao Feng, you don't welcome me. Wang Kun is my mother Wang Feng's younger brother. He was also an intellectual in his early years. After graduating from university, he opened an advertising company with his wife. Wang Feng stared at her son. Why are you talking to your uncle? Go wash your hands and have dinner. Hey, sister, Xiao Feng is just kidding me. Uncle, aunt and sister Linlin didn't come. I haven't seen them for a long time. I missed them a little. Hearing this, Wang Kun smiled and said to his sister. See, summer jobs are meant to hone one's character, so here comes the good news, ha. Your aunt took Linlin back to her parents' home today to visit her grandmother. Lin Feng chatted with his uncle for a while, then went to the kitchen alone to help his father serve the meal. After all, he had been hungry all day. While eating, I couldn't help feeling happy thinking about how lovely my wife was today. My wife is so cute at this time. Based on Lin Feng's understanding of her, that last unintentional concern was definitely not as simple as reminding her that it was dark. But he was afraid that Lin Feng would be retaliated against by those people yesterday. After all, Liu Wei is like a relative to Lin Feng, and there is no secret between them. After all, the two of them have been honest with each other countless times. To put it bluntly, he knows exactly the shape of the beauty spot on your body. After a while, my uncle in the living room was about to leave. Lin Feng also tactfully went over and sent his uncle out the door. Wen Kun waved his hand and said to the inside, "Then let's do it according to the plan. I will go to the hotel tomorrow and prepare first." "Good." After Wen Kun left, Wang Feng slowly said, "We are going to eat at the restaurant tomorrow. It's your grandma's 70th birthday. Please ask for leave from the small supermarket." Lin Feng nodded and soon called Fatty Wang and told him directly that he would not go tomorrow. After thinking about it, he used his father's old cell phone to send a text message to Liu Wei. "I've arrived home safely. Good night, Sister Xiaowei." Chapter 27. I have all the trump cards in my hand. The next morning, Lin Feng was pulled up from the bed by his mother. "I'm not letting you go to work, but that doesn't mean you can sleep in. Hurry up and clean up the house. Your aunt and her family will be coming over soon, and I'm afraid your grandparents will come too." "Okay." Lin Feng squinted his eyes, obviously he hadn't woken up yet. He responded to his mother vaguely and lay down on the bed again, getting ready to take another nap. Who knew that Wang Feng would not give him this opportunity, and directly took the feather blanket and slapped it aside. "Are you awake?" "Awake." When Lin Feng saw the chicken feather blanket, a chill instantly rose from the bottom of his heart. He jumped up from the bed without any hesitation. Lin Feng had experienced the power of his mother's feather duster before. The pain that penetrated deep into his bones was still fresh in his memory even after being reborn. It seemed like a light blow, but in fact he could not sit in a chair for several days. "I'll go mop the floor." Lin Feng put on his clothes in no time, kicked off his slippers and walked into the living room. In just one morning, Lin Feng was almost exhausted. He first cleaned the 2 bedrooms from inside to outside, then mopped the kitchen and bathroom, and finally began to tidy up the living room. Father Lin Yuanting went out early in the morning. There was a meeting at school today to arrange matters for the new semester. Issues such as the reshuffle of the school's leadership team generally have nothing to do with my father. But Lin Feng knew that there was a new principal at N City No. 6 Middle School, so he had to support a group of his own confidants, including his father Lin Yuanting. Although he is just the Dean of Studies, he is also an official of moderate importance. Although no one cares about them outside of school, they still have great power within the school. Lin Feng had just sat on the sofa and hadn't thought for a while when there was a knock on the door, accompanied by a girl's shout, Cousin Lin Feng, are you home?" As soon as Lin Feng heard the voice, he knew it was his aunt's cousin Fang Yan, who was only 17 or 18 years old this year, 1 year younger than Lin Feng. She was much better at studying than Lin Feng. In her previous life, Lin Feng remembered that she was finally admitted to a good university in the south. This made my aunt's family very proud. "I'm coming, why are you rushing?" Lin Feng opened the door with a smile on his face, and his Aunt Wen Ping and Uncle Fang Dasan walked in one after another. Grandma and Grandpa were at the back. Because my Aunt Wen Ping's family had a car, they had to come and pick up the 2 old people. "Grandma, happy birthday." Lin Feng also gave his grandma a hug. Seeing his grandma again after many years, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. From childhood to adulthood, since Lin Feng was the only boy among his grandchildren, his grandmother loved this grandson very much. Whenever she saw something good, she would take it to her second daughter's house first. "Hey, grandson. I haven't seen you for a few days. You have grown taller." Grandma had a loving look on her face, and Grandpa patted Lin Feng on the shoulder. "Not bad, you've become stronger." Aunt Wenping next to her curled her lips and said, "Don't just grow taller, Xiaofeng, how is your application? And university is just an undergraduate program, you still have to work hard in the future." Lin Feng said with a fake smile. "Hey, that's the limit of my brain. Cousin Yang Yang will definitely do well in the exam next year." Wang Ping's face was stunned. She obviously didn't expect that her nephew would fight back. You know, Lin Feng was a taciturn person before. Not to mention fighting back, even when I talked to him, he would avoid my gaze. At this time, Wang Feng came out from the inner room. Hey, you're here, what are you bringing? As he spoke, he took the milk and some other things from Fang Yan's hands. The group of people sat down slowly, and the originally spacious living room suddenly seemed a little crowded. My uncle Fang Dasan took a look at the situation and didn't sit down. He went to the balcony to smoke. Aunt Wenping was interested again at this time. Oh, Xiaofeng, your family has been like this for many years and you haven't considered moving to a new house yet. I'm not saying anything bad about you, but Xiaofeng will definitely get married after she finishes college. It would be so troublesome if she still squeezes in here. Grandma reached out and hit my aunt, as if she didn't want her to say any more. Mother Wenfeng also looked a little unhappy. After all, among 3 brothers and sisters, her family's conditions were the worst. As for the other 2, the younger brother Wang Kun opened an advertising company and naturally earned a lot of money. The older sister's husband Fang Dashan was the manager of a seed company, and the commission he took was equivalent to his family's income for several months. Grandpa came out to smooth things over at this time. Hey, why can't I see you aunting? Where did he go? Wang Feng brewed the tea in her hand and said, hey, he went to school early in the morning. I heard he was going to a meeting. Before she finished speaking, Aunt Wenping started talking again. Oh, you aunting, what's going on? Mom's 70th birthday today, why is she still busy? That's the only monthly salary at the school. If it really doesn't work out, he can get out and ask his brother Dashan to arrange a job for him at the seed company. The money he can earn is more than what he can earn at school. At this time, my uncle Fang Dashan also finished smoking. He certainly knew what his wife looked like. Hey, my brother-in-law is at least more stable. In the seed company, it's all about luck. In fact, Lin Feng didn't want to stay there for a long time. It wasn't that he hated his aunt's family, but it was really unnecessary for relatives to do this. It would be so nice if everyone lived in harmony and happiness. Why do we have to compete with each other? Feng Yang also walked to Lin Feng at this time. Cousin, don't mind it, my mother is like this. It's okay. It's okay. Lin Feng did not talk about this topic with his cousin, but asked about her studies. What's the use of stability? Before Wang Ping could finish her words, her father Lin Yuanting's voice came from the door. Wife, I'm back. You don't know what I did today. Oh, everyone is here. Dad, Mom, you are here. Well, Yuanting is back. Grandma still has that smiling face. It seems that she is always kind to everyone and does not show favoritism. Sister, you are here too. Hey, Yuanting, why are you smiling so happily? Is there something good going on? Aunt Wenping is also a wonderful person, even though she just belittled Lin Yuanting in various ways. But now that the person concerned is here, she has changed her appearance again. Lin Yuanting smiled and said, it's just that the school asked me to be the dean of studies and there are more things to do. Hearing this, Wang Fang's face was full of smiles. It was obvious that her husband had become an official, which was much better than the ordinary teacher he had been before. Oh, if you become a leader, your salary must be high, right? Hey, what's the point of being taller? Just a few $100 more and a lot of things to do. It's far less relaxed than Brother Dashan's. Wang Fang said beside her. Even though she said that, she couldn't suppress her smile. After so many years of marriage, her husband finally earned her face. Yuanting, you must work hard and never let down the party and the school's trust in you. Grandpa was chatting with Dad nearby. Lin Feng didn't want to listen to the adults talking anymore, so he played with his cousin's cell phone. My aunt's family is very well off. Even my cousin Fang Yang, who is in high school, has a mobile phone. This made Lin Feng envious for a long time in his previous life. Now it seems that this is just the case. He has all the royal bombs in his hands. Chapter 28 Conflict. Just as Lin Feng was thinking, his Aunt Li came with her daughter. Oh, Xiaoli, you've become beautiful again. Since Lin Feng's family didn't have a car, so many people wanted to go to the hotel, so naturally they had to use 2 cars. But because his uncle Wang Kun needed to prepare at the hotel, he could only let his wife Yi Li pick them up. Yi Li is not as snobbish as her Aunt Wang Ping. Hey, what's the point of being pretty? You're always worried about her. Cousin Wang Lin also came over to the younger generation and said, Xiao Feng, what are you playing? Before Lin Feng could speak, his cousin next to him began to speak. Cousin, I'm playing Snake. It's very popular recently. Wang Lin smiled and said, oh, the new phone is great. It's much better than mine. Sister, you don't know. I begged for this for a long time. I begged for several months before my mother agreed to buy it for me. Feng Yang repeatedly showed off the mobile phone in her hand with a sense of superiority in her eyes compared to her peers. After all, in high school, there were very few people in her class who had mobile phones. Wang Lin is also a college student at N University. She is going to be a sophomore this year, so her mind is naturally more flexible. Noticing that Lin Feng was around, she knew that her cousin's family was relatively poor. Discussing mobile phones in front of him may dampen his mood. But what shocked her was that when she looked at Lin Feng, he actually changed his previous timidity and looked at her calmly. There was no inferiority complex of a weak teenager in his eyes, but rather an indescribable self-confidence. How to say it? Although the person is still the same, his temperament and the steadiness in his eyes are obviously not like those of a high school student. Sister Lin, after school starts in the summer vacation, I will be your junior. Please take good care of me in the future. Lin Feng handed her a cup of tea on the table and spoke in a neither humble nor arrogant manner while standing beside her. Join my literature club when the time comes. Since you are good at Chinese, I will give you the manuscripts in the future. Wang Lin thought about it again and again before slowly responding to the boy's words. No problem. But I need you to take me with you a little bit. Lin Feng patted his chest and made an okay gesture with his hand without any of his usual shyness and timidity. Oh my God, what you two said makes me want to get into N University too. You're so envious of me. Cousin Feng Yang naturally couldn't understand the situation and kept muttering to herself. If you dare to take this test, I will beat you to death. Hearing his cousin's words, Feng Yang stuck out his tongue and said, I was just talking. After saying that, he looked at his mother Wang Ping. This shows how high Wang Ping's expectations are for her daughter. Due to the number of people, Lin Feng's family could only get into his uncle's car, an old Xiaoli, but the space inside the car was acceptable. But it was far from being as advanced and comfortable as later cars. In the car, Lin Feng's family sat in the back, his auntie Li was driving, and Wang Lin was sitting in the passenger seat. Oh, Xiaoli is different. It's amazing that a woman can drive so well. My mother Wang Feng was behind me, praising me with all her might, and her tone was full of admiration. Lin Feng knew that although his mother didn't care and always said that driving was worse than riding a bicycle, she also wanted to have a car in her heart. I remember in my previous life, when I drove my new car home. My mother couldn't stop laughing and didn't want to get out of the car after staying in the car for the whole morning. No way, Sister Feng, you haven't learned it. This thing is easier than riding a bicycle. Yi Li replied while driving. My mother smiled and waved her hand, I'm not very smart. I don't even understand how to operate the machines in the factory. I definitely won't be able to learn it. Let Xiaofeng learn from him in the future, and you and I will work hard to buy him one. Hey, aunt, maybe Xiaofeng will buy it herself and won't need you. Wang Lin, the co-pilot, spoke up. Him? Wang Feng looked at her son next to her, this brat doesn't have that much ability. Lin Feng was listening at the side, speechless for a while. It seemed that in his mother's mind, he couldn't even afford a car. At this time, Lin Yuanting, who had been silent, spoke up. Xiao Li is driving, could you please not disturb her? When my mother heard this, although she didn't say anything, she hit Lin Yuanting's thigh hard. The latter gasped. They soon arrived at the Zijin Palace Hotel. Before they even entered, the decoration outside attracted the attention of the two elders. The surroundings are decorated exactly like ancient buildings, especially the entrance which imitates the majestic gate of the Forbidden City, except there is a huge screen on top. Since it is daytime now, there is no specific content on it. But it still gives people a high-end feeling. It seems that my uncle has spent a lot of money this time. He actually came here to eat. Lin Feng sat in the back and said with a smile. Little kid, stop talking. Your grandma's 70th birthday must be celebrated in a grand manner. In fact, the original plan was to have each family contribute a little and then pay together, but my uncle Wang Kun didn't lack the money, so there was no need to do so. In his words, all he had to do was ask the other two families to buy some gifts. The money should be paid by him as the son. Just as Lin Feng was looking at the decorations around him, he heard a bang from the front and the whole car began to shake. What's wrong? Lin Feng looked up and saw a black Mercedes parked in front of him. Its angular body showed its nobility. I think I bumped into it. Yi Li's hands were shaking as she spoke tremblingly. Wang Lin said, there's something wrong with this car. It suddenly reversed. Who can react to it? What to do? Wang Feng, who was sitting in the back of the car, was also a little nervous. This was the first time she had experienced this, and she unconsciously held her son's arm. Just then, a bald man with a gold necklace around his neck got out of the Mercedes-Benz in front. He walked directly to the front of the Xiaoli car and patted the front hood of the car. Damn it. How do you drive? Get off here quickly. Yili originally wanted to go down and argue with him, but as soon as she unbuckled her seat belt, she found someone holding down her shoulders. Auntie, wait a moment, wait until uncle comes, don't be in a hurry. Jinjin is another name for aunt. Yili was stunned for a moment and suddenly realized that now was not the time to reason. Once she got off the car, the consequences would be disastrous. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look up to his nephew. It is amazing that a young man has such a noble character and can respond calmly in such a situation. Finally, I remind myself without leaving any trace. Seeing that the people in the car did not come out, the bald man walked directly to the trunk, opened it, and took out an iron rod from it. Although Wen Lin was a college student, he had never seen such a scene before and was frantically calling his father. Hey, Dad, something happened here, come quickly. Bang. The iron rod was slammed heavily on the ground. Fuck it, come out here quickly, or I'll break the glass. Inside the car. Although Lin Yuanting is a teacher, he also has his own pride. If it doesn't work, we can just leave. There are so many of us, what are we afraid of? Lin Feng saw that the situation was not good. If he smashed the glass, it would probably shatter directly, unlike the car windows in later generations. The passengers inside were the ones who were directly injured. Get off. Lin Feng reached out to open the car door. What are you going to do? Are you going to die? Wang Feng held her son. After all, her son was her dearest child. If anything happened to him, it would be. At this time, Wang Kun also rushed over. Grandma and Grandpa didn't come, but his aunt and her family followed behind. My friend, I am so sorry. As the boss of an advertising company, Wang Kun is naturally well versed in the ways of the world. Looking at the man in front of him, it was obvious that he was not someone to be trifled with. What are you? The attitude was extremely bad, but Wang Kun's expression did not change. I'm really sorry, it's my wife who's in the car, and she's not a very good driver. If you don't have good driving skills, don't come out. How about this, compensate me 10,000 yuan. What? At this time, everyone in the car had already gotten out. Lin Feng was among them. When he heard this man's loud words, his heart turned cold. This is clearly extortion. Chapter 29. Mr. Lin, I was wrong. The scene was at a stalemate for a moment. The bald man in front of him seemed to want to blackmail Wang Kun. He held the iron rod in his hand and looked at Wang Kun viciously. Aren't you blackmailing me? You reversed the car so suddenly that we couldn't react at all. Yili stood next to her husband and also refused to pay the money. Wang Kun could naturally tell at a glance that the bald man in front of him with a gold necklace was not an ordinary person. Not to mention the expensive Mercedes-Benz car, just the ferocious look on his face was enough to make people feel a little chilly. But 10,000 yuan is really a bit too much. It is the savings of an ordinary family for several years. Lin Feng was watching from the side. In this situation, he could only wait and see what would happen. At worst, he could call the police and follow the normal procedures. Aunt Wang Ping and her husband Fang Dasan also rushed over at this time. What's wrong? What's wrong? Who wants to blackmail me? Wang Ping is usually arrogant, so when she hears someone bullying her family, she will naturally stand up to protect them. It can be said that she has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. When her family is invaded, she will stand up. Feng Yang and Wang Lin were also standing next to Lin Feng, while a few juniors stood aside, obviously unable to get a word in. Wang Feng and Lin Yuanting stood in front and didn't say anything because they had never experienced such a thing. The bald man looked arrogant, looked at Lin Feng's family, and spat on the ground. What? You want to bully the minority with your numbers? Just wait, the boss of Zijin Palace is my big brother, wait. As he spoke, he took out his cell phone and said, hello. As if he was calling someone. Wang Kun secretly said in his heart, not good. He naturally knew the boss behind Zijin Palace, he was a gangster. As the saying goes, it is easy to deal with the king of hell, but it is difficult to deal with little ghosts. Although Wang Kun is not afraid of people like this, he is afraid that these little devils will cause trouble behind his back. It's these little hooligans who are the most difficult to deal with, because they always walk at night and there's no guarantee that accidents won't happen. Wang Kun was now in a dilemma and was thinking whether he should call the police if the situation seemed to be wrong. Even if compensation is required in the end, at least the safety of the family is guaranteed. As the owner of Zijin Palace Hotel, Zheng Lin is naturally very busy. Although he is the boss of Zijin Palace in name only, he actually has no power. All sources of funds and major decisions are still left to Wu Jingwen to decide. As Wu Jingwen's direct descendant, Zheng Lin naturally received countless benefits. Just from the Zijin Palace Hotel, there is countless money to be made, not to mention the others. What Zheng Lin is thinking about now is how to move up to the next level and become a member of Wu Jingwen's core circle. That's right. Although the young man that day was Sister Wen's younger brother, many people in the club spread the rumor that he was Sister Wen's lover. Let us not talk about whether it is true or not, even if he is just my younger brother. If he could seize this opportunity and whisper some advice in Sister Wen's ear, he would be able to achieve success overnight. If nothing else, at least I can reach Wu Yuhu's level. He had long been unhappy with Wu Yuhu, a man with only one arm. How could he have become brother Hu if his father had not saved the life of Wenji's father, Zhu Xinzhong? Just as Zheng Lin was planning, the phone in the office rang. The scene became tense for a while. Many security guards have rushed over, but it is obvious that the security guards also know this bald man. Wang Kun went up to the security guard and handed him a few cigarettes, but he didn't expect the security guard to not take the cigarettes but waved his hand. They surrounded Lin Feng and his group in the center, as if they were afraid that they would escape. A few security guards were talking and laughing with the bald guy, and something seemed to be wrong. Yi Li was also frightened at this time. There was some fear on her charming face. She hurried to her husband's side and said, "Why don't we give it to him? I think something is wrong." Wang Kun frowned and said in a low voice, "Let's see. If it doesn't work, call the police. You take my eldest sister and second sister in first." Among the younger generations here, Lin Feng stood aside, frowning slightly with his hands crossed. It was not that the matter was difficult, but he was wondering whether he should call Wu Jingwen. Because of the ambiguity between the two in the box before, the relationship can be said to have reached a lifelike level. It can't be described as extremely intimate, but it can be said to be extremely ambiguous. However, both of them were shrewd foxes and neither of them broke the window paper. Maybe Wu Jingwen also felt that something was wrong between the two of them, but even the domineering Wu Jingwen could not resist the feelings between men and women, and Lin Feng was an interesting person besides. Another reason why Wu Jingwen recognized Lin Feng as her foster brother might be to escape that relationship. There was some fear on the faces of my cousins when Lin and Fang Yang, a fear that comes from not being able to enter society. Fear of the unknown in society. Lin Feng was afraid that someone would attack them and hurt them, so he walked slowly and stood in front of the two girls. After a while, a thin middle-aged man in his 30s came over, followed by two security guards. "Brother Zheng, you're here, come and see what has happened to my new Mercedes after they hit it." When the bald man saw his savior coming, he threw the iron bar directly to the security guard and ran to the middle-aged man. On his way here, Zheng Lin already knew roughly what had happened. I didn't take it too seriously, as this kind of thing happens almost every once in a while. The only difference is that the bald guy in the Mercedes this time is a member of the society. Although he is not from his own faction, at least he can save face. I took a look at the rear of the Mercedes and saw that it just had some paint peeling off, nothing serious. Zheng Lin glanced at Wang Kun and Yi Li beside him. He didn't know them. They shouldn't be important people. Because as a person in charge of a restaurant, knowing every important person in any city is a basic skill. You can't just arrange for the municipal party secretary to come to dinner in the lobby, right? It's not just Zheng Lin. Everyone in the management of Zijin Palace Hotel, even the doorman, has to have this look. After understanding the basic situation, Zheng Lin had a rough idea in his mind and said, "Bald, what's wrong? What are you going to do?" This means asking him how much money he is willing to pay. When the bald guy saw that someone was backing him up, he shouted, "It's not much, just 10,000 yuan." At this time, Wang Kun also came over and handed a cigarette to Zheng Lin. "Boss Zheng, long time no see." "It's me, Wang Kun." Zheng Lin was a little confused and didn't seem to know him. Wang Kun quickly said, "The billboard at the door was designed by our company. We even had a drink together last time. My uncle Wang Kun's advertising company is not very big, so he designed some of the marginal parts. He also had dinner with Zheng Lin before as the decorator of Zijin Palace. It's just that at the banquet, Wang Kun was just the one who poured the wine and Zheng Lin didn't remember him. Oh. Zheng Lin ignored him and didn't even take the cigarette. You guys handle it. I'm just a businessman. As soon as these words were spoken, Wang Kun realized that things were not going well. It seemed that he was not helping anyone, but he had already leaned towards the other side. He has decided to pay the money and must not call the police, because once he does, it would be a slap in the face of Zheng Lin and the company might not have a place to survive in the entire N city. Xiao Li, go to the bank and withdraw 10,000 yuan. After hearing this, Yi Li did not hesitate. Her years of business experience told her that this was the best way to solve the problem. The bald man also showed a satisfied smile on his face. Wouldn't it be better if we did this earlier? Wang Kun also showed an apologetic expression on his face. I'm really sorry, my wife's driving skills are not very good. As he said this, he handed a cigarette to the bald man. The bald man took it and said with a low-lewd laugh, hee hee, your wife is pretty good, hee hee. Naturally, there was a lewd and obscene smile on his face. The sound was not loud and only the two of them could hear it. My Aunt Yi Li herself came from a wealthy family. Her parents were both businessmen and she and Wang Kun founded an advertising company, so naturally she had never suffered any hardship. Although she is over 40, she has taken very good care of herself and her skin is as delicate as that of a young woman in her 30s. Wang Kun clenched his fists but then loosened them. He still had a family to take care of. Zheng Lin naturally had no interest in bickering and was about to leave when the matter was resolved. However, when he turned around, he saw a familiar figure. No. Isn't that sister Wen's adopted brother and secret lover? Is it him? Just when Zheng Lin was puzzled, Lin Feng suddenly showed him a weird smile. Fuck, that's the boy. Zheng Lin felt something was wrong. It looked like they were a family. What was he doing? Helping outsiders bully the family of Wenji's brother. Thinking of this, Zheng Lin's legs were already shaking and he wanted to slap himself. Suddenly he thought of a remedy. Well, let's give it a try. Mr. Lin. I am sorry for not welcoming you in person. I apologize here. Zheng Lin shouted as he walked towards Lin Feng, making the people around him a little confused. Zheng Lin, the boss of Zijin Palace, who was silent and low-key just now, why is he shouting so humbly now?